Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 28th regular Committee of the Whole meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nations. Our clerk tonight is Mr. Sheila Gurry. And in case you're wondering why Mayor Krogh isn't here, I'm the acting mayor, Councillor Turley. So this is my first gig at this, so bear with me. For those interested in, well, thank you, Councillor Hammonds. Those interested in asking a question at the end of the agenda, the question period sign-up sheet is on the desk by the computers. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. At the start of question period, the chair will call those who have signed up to the podium to address council. Any introductions of late items? Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. For late items this evening, we're removing agenda item 5C, Boathouse and Paddling Center presentation. They no longer wish to come before the Committee of the Whole. As well, I believe there's a request to move a delegation, which is just for your information, Chair, the presentations go first, and there is no specific time limit, though we do ask them to keep it to around 15 minutes for presentations. But there's a request to move the delegation, which is 5 minutes, for the BMX Association to the front of the agenda, so in front of the presentations, if Council so chooses.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
So moved by Mayor Krogh and seconder Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, now we need a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended. So moved Councillor Thorpe, seconder Councillor Hammonds. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes as circulated from the Committee of the Whole meeting held back on July 15th. Moved by Councillor Hammonds, second Councillor Thorpe. Any discussions, questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to the BMX. I see some young people out there. So it's under delegations. And it's the delegation from the Nanaimo BMX Association to present to Council an infrastructure upgrade community development project, a project proposed for the Marie Davidson BMX Park. And I'm reminded to tell you, you have 5 minutes, so. And there's lights there. It'll go green in a minute. Oh, there they are. Okay. I told you I was new at this job.
All right.
Okay, you're on.
Thank
Carry
you.
on.
My name is Keir Grattan, and I am here on behalf of the Nanaimo BMX Association. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to introduce Nanaimo BMX and a project for which we have just completed the conceptual and schematic design phases for. Perfect. We are here to request $35,000 in financial support from the city to help us complete the design development phase, as well as ongoing support and assistance from staff with the planning and design for this project. Nanaimo BMX has been serving the Nanaimo community since 1986. It was originally started out in Cedar, but moved to its current location at the Marie Davidson BMX Park, located within Bevan Park in 1989. It was founded by Marie Davidson, who some of you might remember, as she was named BC's Most Amazing Mom in 2007 by the Vancouver Province for her dedication to fostering over 140 children. She fell in love with the sport of BMX because it provided a place for her foster children to ride safely, to ride together as one large family, and a place that fostered healthy role models and mentors. Today, if you were to visit our track, you would find that these values still hold true. You would find that our track is open and inclusive to all individuals. All you need is a bike, helmet, long sleeves, and pants, and you can ride. It continues to be a place that draws families to participate together. Our riders age from 2 to well into their 60s. Riders compete hard against one another, but always wait at the finish line to fist bump and high five each other. Older riders continue to coach and mentor younger riders. Trophy nights occur on the last race of every month. Everyone celebrates the accomplishments of the newest and youngest riders who receive the largest trophies. And most importantly, no one rides the bench in BMX. The way our races are set up, each rider, no matter their age or ability, will have a competitive moto to ride in. With these values in place, for the past 30 years, Nanaimo BMX has been successful in producing top-level riders and attracting national and international attention. Riders like the late Stevie Smith, UCI World Downhill Champion, Darren Berklaw, 3-ride champion, Ben Leslie, 2018 Canadian Pro Champion, all started their cycling careers at Nanaimo BMX. and top developing riders such as Piper Grattan and Alexander Booth, who are both top riders in both Canada and the US, both started at Nanaimo BMX. We are proud to say in the 30 years of operation, we have been completely self-sufficient. Our members have always been able to pull our resources together to rebuild sections of the track, repair equipment and buildings when necessary, and keep the track in pristine shape, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of the entire community, as our track remains open to the public outside scheduled race times. Now, however, after 30 years of operation, an infrastructure project is required. The upgrade is essential to keep our riders safe and to be able to continue to offer our programming to our membership. The need to upgrade the infrastructure is not a new idea, but really became a priority over the past 2 years. There are new technologies and design advancements making the sport safer for participants and assisting in their development. During the past 2 years, the club has reviewed our facility needs and undertaken a series of fundraising campaigns, enabling us to take these discussions from ideas to reality. There's been a lot of community interest and support already shown, and now that we have been in discussions with the city staff, we have developed a clear vision and scope for this project to address our concerns and needs, which will bring Nanaimo BMX and the Marie-Davidson BMX Park back to the destination track in North America. Specifically, our infrastructure upgrade will include a new safety barrel start gate, a larger start hill relocated to provide safer access, a new track design featuring a pro line for a wider range of riding skill levels, and new lighting for the facility to bring lighting up to safe sporting standards. These improvements would allow us to extend our season, hold larger events, and help position our riders to be on top of the podium for many years to come. The Nanaimo BMX is looking to partner with the city for financial assistance in the amount of $35,000, as well as assistance with the planning and project management required for the design phase of this infrastructure upgrade. This next design development phase for the project is crucial to allow us to understand the full scope and costs and better enable us to reach out to the broader community to get behind this project. With these upgrades, the Nanaimo BMX and the Marie-Davidson BMX Park could go another 30 years without major outside support. We are working with the Rotary Clubs of Nanaimo and other local businesses to bring this project to reality and hope that the city join in support. Thank you again for your time, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, sir. I believe Mayor Krogh has a question, I believe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I might say, as someone who knew, respected, and admired Marie Davidson, all she did for this community, and conscious of the fact that we don't spend money without a staff report, I'm going to move, I suspect, is a pro forma motion that this matter be referred to staff for a very brief report, and a report back to council as we enter into budget considerations for this year.
Second, Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Councillor Hemmings? There you are.
No, in support of the motion, full support.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Just very briefly, thank you for the presentation. It's near and dear to my heart because my son was an avid BMX at the park almost 30 years ago. So absolutely, it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
How do you stop this thing? Okay, now back to presentations. And I believe we have, I'm going to probably butcher your name, I apologize. Dr. Paterico, Medical Director, Nanaimo Community, and Dr. Bell.
So I was here 4 years ago bringing gifts. This is actually gifts that we.
Thank you.
Green, thanks, sir.
These are made by our teenager dress class that the city has helped.
Not sure where the hell I got pink. Okay, so as a presentation, sir, you have supposedly unlimited time, but I'm probably going to say something after 15 minutes, so
Okay,
please
well,
continue.
thank you, sir. And as said, we're going to call this episode 2 because I was here in front of you in City Council in almost 4 years to the month, actually. And so as said, I want my colleague, Dr. Bell, to come up at the end to talk about the Nanaimo GP Specialist Think Tank. So if I am ending early, I'm hopeful for a callback, because I do want to share some information about community health, what's happened in the last 4 years. I'll tell you about who I am, our community health challenges, and then some community solutions. So there's City Council, different. I think only Councilman Thorpe is the only one that was there from 4 years ago. I don't know if you remember my presentation.
Yes, I do.
There will be a quiz and test at the end of all this. But just to disclose who I am and what I'm about and who I'm sort of representing and then not representing. I'm a fee-for-service family physician, 26 years in Nanaimo. Blue Sky Clinic co-creator, we'll talk more about that. I'm a UBC family practice preceptor teaching behavioral psychology. I'm the medical director of community health with Island Health. I'm a Nanaimo Division family practice, GP lead in wound care and a member. And last but not least, a member of the Nanaimo Community GP Specialist Think Tank. So with all those titles, I feel like a race car with all those logos on me. I'm going to try and kind of keep it simple and not actually represent anyone except me, a family physician that's been here for 26 years. I graduated from medical school and then did my residency, and I've been in Nanaimo my entire career. So I care about this town, and I've seen some changes that I want to share with you tonight about healthcare. So just as a little bit of a metaphorical reference there, you can see the Greek on the door and family doctor. Bureaucracy and politics is still very Greek to me, so bear with me. I know I'm a family doctor. To sum up my talk from 4 years ago would be in these 11 words. Food is medicine, exercise is medicine, smoking is not. It will even go smoking and vaping is not, from what we've learned. And relationships heal. And those were in the 5 E's, and you can go back to the talk. It's still online to sort of see, and I'll reference back to it as we talk tonight. But if you can bring these 11 words into healthcare, some of the complicated issues that we have are simply fixed with Healing Nanaimo. It's my business to heal. So starting off, I mean, we have, you're going to hear in a couple minutes about anxiety and depression, mental health issues. We have a mental health crisis in Nanaimo, the opioid crisis, which I know you're going to hear about. But I want to share with you tonight about something that we use. It's a psychotherapeutic tool called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And I'm just curious, by council, who knows about it and its therapeutic benefits? That's awesome. So we're going to actually do some CBT, if that's okay. And one of the tenets of CBT is that you earn your mood. You earn your health. And that's a big change. And this is actually the 6th E from my talk from last year. So we had 5 E's. I'm going to go 6, empowerment. And again, that's a conversation we'll have a bit more about. But to start off, one of the tenets of CBT is you earn your mood. The other piece is gratitude, bringing gratitude to everything that we do. And as said, here tonight, I mean, I'm grateful for all what you do. I mean, doing public office and the things that you do, you know, is a sacrifice. And I really appreciate and am grateful for what you're doing for our city. Hopefully we can come together and do some even better things. So gratitude is a great way to remember we do have a healthcare system and we do have safety in our city, and those are important things to always remember. But we do need to go forward because there is some dark times ahead. We're going to go Matrix on you. Who's seen The Matrix? The red pill, blue pill? Maybe you have to do that for homework. Again, back to, I'm going to give counsel. You get to make a choice tonight. The red pill basically tells you about the sometimes painful truth of reality, and the blue pill, remaining in blissful ignorance or illusion. And around climate change, that's a great example of what's going on in the world. And I'm going to ask you, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? I do the same thing in my office when I help patients. I will sometimes say, do you want the bitter pill, which is actually the truth? It's not going to taste good or feel good, but it's going to make you healthier and happier. Or we can just do the sugar pill. It'll make you feel good really shortly, but it's not going to do any change. So I guess that's my question to you all. What do you guys want? Because I've prepared 2 talks. I got a blue pill talk and a red pill talk. So please, we got red right there. Do we have a red? Are we a courageous group? even you guys. We got a contingent. I just want to thank for some of the slides. We have Laura Loudon from the Division of Family Practice helping me with some of these slides ahead. So we're going red? Okay, so blue pill, blue pill, blue pill, blue pill. Well, kind of blue pill, but we'll give you a better blue pill, or red pill. Blue pill, blue pill, blue pill. Okay, this is a blue pill, but I want to show you how blue pill and red pill can be quite different if you make a scientific, or take a scientific aim. So here is what's going to happen in terms of population. Everybody's very happy in this talk, or in this picture. Population's going to increase from our 0 to 19-year-olds 13%. Our 45s to 64s are up 9%, and guess what? Our 75 plus are up over 125%. It's a nice monograph. But let's go science now and show you what a graph looks like. The purple graph is that greater than 75 graph, and that sort of wows me. And again, this is from 2016. We have another slide from 2018, but I like this slide because it shows a few things. It shows that we in Nanaimo are older than the rest of the province. It also shows the green graph, which I find quite fascinating because I'm in the green graph. We've got a few green graphs out there. It's going to go down. And if you have a tax structure, I don't know, and again, I know it's municipal taxing is different, but that, and is that green, am I going to leave in Nanaimo? I don't know what's going on, but that green graph is going down. So it's an interesting point to be made of where we're going in the next few years. So again, 2019, I'm going to show you some of the effects of the graph in the community. 340. We have 340 beds at NRGH. Okay, when I was here back in 2015, we had 306 beds. Now, we didn't get a new building, but we've been able to make more room. This is an interesting graph of what it's been like at NRGH over the last number of years. In the last 2 years, we've pretty much been May 18, 2018, last year and a half, we've been over census. Every day, there are more patients than beds in the hospital, okay? From yesterday, we had 105, I think, % in the hospital. So it just gives you a bit of a flavor of what's going on in the community. Going to shift into mental health and substance use, which is another big part in the community. Addiction, anxiety, depression, these are all on the increase. I'm also going to go on record to say that we do have a mental health crisis. We also, by the way, it's also called MHSU. And in Nanaimo, we have a crisis in terms of our specialist colleagues, our psychiatrists. There are over 1,000 patients waiting to see a psychiatric specialist in Nanaimo. We lost 4 psychiatrists in the last year and a bit. Good news, we've had 1 new one join on in the last week and a bit, so positive in some of the dark, but at the same token, we have some real issues. This slide is always humbling for me. I always like this. It brings me back and sort of says, okay, what about healthcare? I mean, I'm a physician, but I'm not the end game in town. 25% of health, what makes Canadians sick? Your healthcare, okay? But having said that, in terms of what city and municipal do, whether it's income, early childhood development, disability, education, social exclusion, social safety net, gender, employment, working conditions, race, trauma, safe and nutritious food, housing and homelessness, know a lot about that, and community belongingness. And that is, I think, a track that we will talk about, because I am a solution-focused doctor. Even though I'm here giving you some dark, we've got some good stuff too. But this also just humbles me to know that as a healthcare professional, I'm not the only game in town, okay? Let's talk child poverty. You probably know this already, but 25% of our 0 to 5 are living in poverty. Don't have to say more than that. It's just that it's something that we as a community need to address and look at a bit more aggressively. This is an interesting map of Nanaimo. I mean, I think everybody knows there's a sort of a north-south socioeconomic gradient. But you can see full well, I'm going to show you a graph in a second of what's happening in community family practice. But the south end of Nanaimo is the most vulnerable and has the greatest need. Let's talk about family physicians. So this is a map of Nanaimo April 2018, okay? So you can see, I mean, Nanaimo's a funny town. We talk about transportation and bike lanes and even rapid transit, because transportation is something that I see as a healthcare issue. But anyways, this is 2018 April. Thank you, Laura, for helping with this map. But in that time, we've lost the closing of 6 family physician offices. One is closing and moving north, a little arrow up in North Nanaimo, which is positive. Those patients aren't losing a physician, but overall, things are not looking good. And now if we look down into the south, we have 2 areas of access for primary care. Okay. Let's go positive. Okay, that's it. He's our light. Does anybody know who this family physician is? Anybody? Steve Bierman, that's right. Steve Bierman, he's meeting the Queen for the 4th time. So anybody that's meeting the Queen for the 4th time must know something. He's actually world renowned in terms of drowning and prevention. The reason why I'm bringing up Steve is that he's my partner and colleague at Anchor, but he's also the cause of some of this stuff that's going on. But he's also the cure, so that's why I'm paying homage to him. So the cause is he is retiring next year. So his practice at the end of this year will be looking for a doc. We're hopeful to replace him. At my clinic, we've been very lucky. We have young docs in the crowd there. But there is some real concerns. Now, Dr. Bierman had a bit of a vision, and the cool thing is that in 2007, I didn't think he'd be able to do it, pull it off. In 2007, he brought the UBC family practice residency to Nanaimo. And that has been a real positive change in terms of our young doctors. We actually have 2 young doctors from that program in the audience today. So to understand that over the years, since 2007, we've graduated over 80 docs, and 35 have actually remained in Nanaimo. So Nanaimo's doing something right. So there's always talk in the press about a family physician shortage. We don't have a family physician shortage in Nanaimo. Actually, it's a resource allocation issue. We can talk more about that maybe in episode 3 or even in questions. Here is Nanaimo, and thank you, Laura, for the data, in the sense that here we are, we have 88 family physicians in the community right now. We had just back to last year 92 in community. So some have left because of retirement, some have left because of job-related issues or other things. The rest, the interesting, I'll put to the green, there are 32 locum family physician docs in the community. That's something to be said. And I also want to say to you that Comox north of the island don't have family physician shortage, okay? It's the island. I said Nanaimo is popular. We have the mountain, we have the ocean in terms of sort of surfing. This is a good problem to have. If you're somewhere in Saskatchewan and back east, you see a different story. So this is back to Dr. Bierman. He had an idea way back in 2016, and he sort of partnered with myself and Dr. Jessica Aute, and we partnered with our Division of Family Practice and had some really good understanding of this innovative idea of how to restructure and innovate family medicine. That was 2017, because we knew the storm was coming. At this point in time, Primary Care Plus still lays in the file. But just to let you know about relational care, and I talked about this, relationships heal. Relational continuity when it comes to family medicine, an ongoing trusting therapeutic relationship between a patient and a primary care physician and their team, where the patient sees this primary care physician the majority of the time, results in improved health outcomes, decreased mortality, better quality of care, reduced healthcare costs, increased patient and provider satisfaction, fewer emergency room visits, and hospital admissions. Something to think about. Last but not least, this is some of the inspiration from Dr. Bierman, and I want to now start going into solutions because we're solution focused. We started a Nanaimo family physician house call service. So we're now actually going out to patients in community who can't get to the doctor or who are sort of ill enough that they can't get unless they're going to get up through the emergency. And we're caring for people in their homes. And I said we have some of the young grads from our program there helping us out. Want to get back to mental health and substance use. As I said, I'm not just all dark. I want to give you some of the things that are happening, and I want to congratulate the city for some of the things that you have done. The Food for You program, which you started back, Food is Medicine, which you were helping and then helped get to going with the Nanaimo Loaves and Fishes. That is so cool, that type of work that has started and needs to definitely keep growing. You have sponsored the Nanaimo Walk with the Doc program. We're always there, always invite anyone in the room, the second Saturday down at Mafio Sutton, where we're walking at 10 o'clock and talking health and other things. And that's a city thing that's gone on for about 5 years now, so thank you. So exercise is medicine. Relationships Heal. You, in sort of partnership, helped us start this teen stress anxiety group. And those balls, my class made those last week for you. And now they're not called stress balls, we call them CBT balls. Your job might be a little stressful, but it's at least something that one of those kids has sort of put that back to you, because as I said, it's a free program, so thank you. And then there's some really cool innovation with the Youth Wellness Center, and I know this gentleman's in the room with a bit of a vision on how to partner healthcare. At the Aquatic Center, there's been the start of the Youth Wellness Center, or a youth hub, and that's for kids or young people 25 and under for access to healthcare, be it mental health or other things. So I said, these are really cool things that the city has done. We need to do more, of course, because of the crisis. I've brought a whole bunch of these MHSU health pads, which I will share with you at the end, of how to access mental health services after hours or during hours. We now have CBT groups programs. The division has brought that up from Victoria, and we actually have one of the facilitators in the audience today, Dr. Bell. We have a couple apps that I find useful. I'll just say MindShift app, as well as the Booster Buddy app. Again, small changes, but can make small steps to make bigger changes. Last but not least, I want to just talk about the Urgent Primary Care Center, which has opened in Nanaimo. You may not know this, but a year ago, we had an offering from our ministry to open an urgent primary care center. It was a tough decision because they wanted us to do it, i.e. the ministry, within like 4 months. The nice thing is, understanding bureaucracy and politics, we were able to come together as a community, and I'll just say the GP Specialist Think Tank and community partners, which included council members, Sinemu, Patient Voice, business, I'm missing somebody, I'm sure. Having said that, come together to make a decision to have it at the Medical Arts Clinic. It's opened, and it is now 7 days a week, and it's an integrated team of doctors, nurses, social workers, pharmacists, and mental health counselors. Again, something that Nanaimo can be proud of, because we can come together and make some pretty cool things happen if we're given the opportunity. Just going to finish off on going to Africa, because I said I was going to go around the world in terms of some of the solutions. Africa, this is something called the Friendship Bench. And in Africa, or in Zimbabwe, they had, I get this right, 12 million people, 2 psychiatrists. They had a mental health crisis. Well, we all know that sometimes psychiatry is also human connection, community belongingness. So somebody got a wonderful idea about starting these things called friendship benches. And they trained retired grandmas in terms of solution-focused therapy. And the cool thing is, this has made a radical difference. There's TED Talks and other research articles done on that. So taking Africa sort of to the next degree, we went down to Victoria and bought a retired bench from the, what was it called? The Victoria Lawn Bowling Club. And it's an 8-foot cedar bench, and we painted it orange, and we put it up at anchor. So I said, it's just a first step, but it's something that we have to start thinking outside of the box with some of these healthcare issues. Want to end off with looking not so far, but across the water to Gabriola. They also had a family physician shortage there. So what did they do? The community came together, built a clinic. They came under budget and on time. Of the class of 2019, 7 of the 9 graduates want to stay in Nanaimo. What I'm just going to end off with, if you build it, and I said I'm not asking the city to build it for us, I'm just asking the city to help be with us in something like this, that if they build it, the family physicians will come. On that note, am I behind or ahead of schedule? Or?
Just about right on time.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to, because of our journey through healthcare and bureaucracy, I've actually asked my colleague, Dr. Jenny Bell, to speak on behalf of the GP Specialist Think Tank.
But I'm really quick, I'm just a minute or two. So I'm here on behalf of the Nanaimo Think Tank, which represents the medical community. So in our think tank, we have representatives from every family practice clinic in Nanaimo, as well as a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, and an internist. So the idea was so that we could come together and identify what we see as the medical needs in Nanaimo so that the funding and resources can be allocated appropriately to what the actual needs in the city are. And so we have three main aims. One is to revitalize and encourage the revitalization of family practice in Nanaimo. And then the second one would be for attachment so that every person in Nanaimo has access to a family doctor. And the third is prevention of physician burnout. So it's just to let you know that we're here and happy to interact.
Thank you. I believe we have at least one question.
Don't you stay?
Are you available for questions now?
Yeah, we're open for
Perfect.
questions.
Councillor Armstrong.
On time.
One of my questions, it goes around when we're talking about youth and the ability to access mental health. Is there any way that they can just go on their own, or do you require parents? Because in some cases, they want the parents, others they don't. I understand over 12 isn't an issue, but under 12?
I didn't get that last.
Like if they're over 12, they can go without requiring permission from parents, but under 12, obviously, they have to have parent permission. How do they access services? Like, there's so many concurrent disorders, and I hear from people all the time that there's nothing for kids in this community.
Yeah.
So just if you could address that. And secondly, I don't know if you're aware, but we are looking hopefully to get a Foundry project here, so fingers crossed.
I'm excited about that.
Yes.
So no, in the interim, I mean, depends if it's an acute issue or something that's a bit more ongoing. Again, I've noticed over the years, because I've been doing this anxiety and depression program, I've been able to help the kids and guide them through the system when they have a family physician to help with that. That's kind of the first, point if they can find that. But having said that, in our community, that pad, which I have a whole bunch for you, of the access points, young people can go down to Brooks Landing. So that is one option. Even the medical arts clinic is also another place for primary care access. So if it is something more acute that needs addressing, but that's true. I mean, it's the relational continuity. I see that in my practice all the time. When you have a young person and you actually are with them, or like they're not feeling alone in their, I'll just say, trials and tribulations, it's a game changer. I don't know if that helps address that
I guess my
question.
question is how can you connect them? Like, we hear there's a waiting list at psychologists for 3 to 4 months, and that's for adults. For kids that specialize in that, it's even greater. So how can we connect these kids in crisis faster, I guess is my question. Like, I'm going back to my previous world where, you'd have a kid in a crisis that slipped their wrist, whatever, they go to the Emerge, they're there for a day, then they're released, and there's no follow-up.
Yeah, and that's not the greatest place for a young person to be,
Yeah,
is in
it's
the
not,
emergency
but that's the
department.
only option.
So I said, and this is kind of the sad truth, if you didn't know this, I'm sorry about the dark news. Our child psychiatrist in Nanaimo is going to be retiring next year.
Yeah, there's
So we are a town that does not have a lot of that sort of resourcing. The best medicine that I can suggest is that having a relationship with a family physician to be able to be an advocate, and then understanding what the child may need, and then going out and finding them in the community. But if it's an acute issue, whether the medical arts, urgent primary care, or Brooks Landing. But no,
Thank you very much.
That's probably one of the reasons why I brought that CBT program for young people, because there was nothing. Now that's, at least it's one thing that's on the child and youth mental health, if you want to call it their list.
Well, thank you very much for your efforts, really appreciate it.
So next in the question we have from Councillor Bonner, followed by Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair, and to our delegation, thank you very much for your presentation. Some of the things that I found of interest is things I've been talking about for some time, and that's our social determinant of health. And you also mentioned there child poverty, children who are vulnerable entering the school systems. These are also economic drivers. People will look at these stats when deciding to move here if they know they're available. Do you have any ideas on how we can move the needle on some of these
Yeah,
that
no,
we could help you out with?
Yeah, no, I can just tell you in real time, what has happened with the Medical Arts Urgent Primary Care Center is a social worker has now been implemented in that community program. And talking to my colleagues, it's been a game changer. Like to have a social worker embedded right in a clinician's office has been such a breath of fresh air. So I think that's the thing, is that we have a number of social workers we could use and need more to work more in a team-based environment. So back to the access, at least we now have that at Medical Arts. We're hopeful in the future to have more of those type of situations. That's something we're definitely working on.
Thank you.
Councillor Hammonds, you don't want to come up here. There we are.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the delegation. I sit on the city's Health and Housing Task Force, of which Councillor Bonner is the chair. One of our primary responsibilities, we've only met 5 times, 6 times. We're, really trying to get our mandate hammered out. But one key piece of that mandate is to advocate with the health authority to address what you describe, and I believe myself to be true, is a mental health crisis in this city. We know that Island Health has an inequity in how they divide their resources, south of the Malahat versus north of the Malahat. So my question for you is, what role do family physicians play in advocating to the health authority for better mental health and substance use services for your patients? Pardon me.
Great question. When you say great question, Leslie, you want to come and help us? No, just Leslie Keenan, our Executive Director of the Division of Family Practice. I mean, it's almost going back to grassroots at this point. As said, because I've been a family physician for 26 years, I've learned how to do workaround. The system that we've lived in and worked in hasn't been perfect, and so I take it case by case. And that's the thing, is when my patient needs something, I've been more than passionate about helping them get the resources they need. So that's on the kind of microscopic person level. I think on a community level, I think being here today, like this is the think tank actually in motion. Dr. Joris Wiggers, who is our psychiatrist on the think tank, brought the crisis to our group in July. The division was involved, the Division of Family Practice was involved. And we are now starting to look at this and bubbling it up. So actually just being here today, having you hear about what's happening is part of this, understanding that we need more resources. But then again, I put back to what's happened in Africa. You look at that graph is scary. We need to also think about maybe doing it differently anyways. And that's where, like I say, the orange bench comes out. We call it the connection bench. It's simple, but it can move needles. So I think back to advocating, I think we need in Nanaimo to become a bit more organized. I think the think tank's part of it. You'll hear about the MSA and doing what they're doing. You're going to hear from Dr. Natarajan about the cardiac care. I think this is a really neat thing. We're coming together. This is, again, I said relationships heal. The fact that we're here today is the healing part of this journey. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer of screaming louder to those that fund us, because I've learned over the years that doesn't seem to make much difference. And I'm not giving up. Maybe a little disenfranchised, but as a GP, as a family physician, I figured out, my patient needs this help now. What can I do for them? Does that help? Or maybe I'll be invited back for episode 3, because there's so many things.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair Turley. Interesting presentation. I think the mental health stuff is probably something we're well aware of and learning more and more about, and appreciate you bringing it forward. But the aging demographics there was quite staggering, and knowing that as you age, you have more and more health issues. Is there a point, has it been calculated, where basically you can't tax your way out of it? The cost of caring for people, just by the sheer number of people over that certain age, is that on the horizon? And in terms of civic infrastructure, we do control rec facilities and roads and all those sort of things. Is there ways that the city can, just through its own infrastructure, help provide better access to exercise and parks and all those sort of things? And or do you see any areas in Nanaimo where we could be improving?
So to address your first question, I mean, that's why those 11 words at the beginning, exercise is medicine. So when we talk about frailty and aging, you can age more gracefully. I mean, what better way to stave off dementia than exercise? We now know medications don't do much or don't seem to help that much. So no, encouraging a city that's more walkable, bikeable, I mean, these are all various things that are important for the exercise piece. Access to healthy food. I mean, I know that's something the Food for You and other programs are doing. So it's still back to the basics. I mean, if you go back to my talk from 2015, some of that stuff is there, so I'll let you go back and read that. You had one more question about aging in general. This is the bigger conversation. It's something, again, where compassion, like, you know, you look at the science, that hard graph, everyone's getting older, okay? But having that kind, compassionate conversation, there's a wonderful book, if anybody's read it, by Atul Gawande. He's a surgeon turned author for The New Yorker. It's called Being Mortal. It's a wonderful book that I would encourage you, if you have any sort of invested interest in our elders and elder care, about how to be kind, how to give autonomy, and how to age gracefully. Because right now the healthcare system, in its, I guess, need to help, sometimes overlooks, are we really helping? Like, extending life doesn't always mean helping. And those are deeper conversations that happen, I will say, in a family physician's office with her patients. Advanced care planning, you know, medical assistance in dying. These are all things I think we as a society are going to have more conversations on. But I mean, that's just the beginning, and at least we're looking at graph. I mean, was that the first time you've seen that graph, or you've seen that graph? You've seen the graph? Like, red pill, okay, no more blue pill. I think that's kind of where the conversation needs to go. Hey, we're in this together. And no, I just thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
And Councillor Hammonds, did you?
Yes, I have a quick follow-up question, if I may. I don't think, there we go. This one will be easier, I promise. As a city councillor, I'm always curious about what brings people to our city. You said we have a really good track record of recruiting family medicine residents who want to stay in the community. So what is it about Nanaimo that's encouraging people to stay? And is that something the city can help with?
Put you guys on the spot. Why'd you stay? Relationships. Relationships. I think just to be aware that this the UBC program's here, and I said these young people are amazing. They've made me 10 years younger in terms of how I practice medicine. Their new ideas and ways of helping. I said we go forward together here, and no, that's the nice thing about Nanaimo. We don't have that issue, but I think we do definitely need to look at the allocation and the funding issues, and I think that's episode 3. If you have me back, or we can chat more about what can be done. Primary Care Plus is a great solution for that, but I'll leave it to that because I only have so much time.
So, I don't see anybody else on the queue here. Anybody else? Last chance for questions? Hearing none, thank you very much to both of you, and good luck on the progress, because those of us over 70 are going to need it pretty quick. Okay, next on the agenda is another presentation from Mr. Kim Smythe, the CEO of the Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Presentation, Field Surveys. Kim Smythe, CEO, Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, to provide presentation regarding 2019 field surveys of Nanaimo businesses. Welcome. And you've got more than 5 minutes, Mr. Smythe. It's 15-ish.
I've only got 23 pages here, so really.
Well, be quick.
A bit of a misleading title. We're not going to be talking about anything that happens in fields here today. Thank you, Worship and Council, for receiving this presentation from the Chamber. We're here tonight as an organization dedicated to helping build a better community by confronting complex problems and contributing to finding solutions. For years, homelessness in Nanaimo was an unsettling issue felt mainly in our city center. Going back to 2008, the city was successful in receiving provincial funding to build up to 160 units of supportive housing to remedy the homelessness problem. Unfortunately, not all of the funds were used for those purposes, and overall success of the project was not realized. The momentum of homelessness continued to accelerate as housing costs began rising and the opioid crisis emerged. By 2017, it was apparent that a lack of leadership was resulting in a growing population of street-entrenched people with accompanying significant mental health and substance use problems. Today, businesses and residents are facing critical issues with rising crime and a sense of social disruption that seems beyond control. Let me say, Nanaimo is a compassionate community, as evidenced by our many volunteers and our hardworking not-for-profits dedicated to positive social action. But now, however, frustration is rising to record levels as the social disorder tied to homelessness seems to know no end. But it's vital to also point out that there is a less than direct correlation between the rising population of homeless and our crime stats. This needs to be pointed out and needs to be understood clearly so that we're not trying to solve one problem when the actual problem exists over here. We're not misdirected or deflected into doing the wrong things and applying the wrong solutions in the wrong places. Chamber's research showed that increasing criminal activity is tied directly to increasing substance abuse and addiction. Although drug addiction and substance abuse is high among a portion of our homeless population, for many of those struggling with homelessness, its origins are in poverty and housing affordability. This is especially true among our aging population, who are forming a large part of the new homeless population. They are not the ones contributing to spiraling crime rates. Impact of Discontent City. Chamber was on record speaking to this protest that landed in our lap in May of 2018. Prior to this, we had warned Council of the consequences of not paying attention to the growing homelessness problems. Tent City protests saw up to 300 homeless people encamped downtown, engaging in criminal escapades including shoplifting, theft, break-and-enters on businesses, cars, and boats, assaults, trade and stolen property, open drug abuse, vandalism, drug trafficking, and prostitution. Relocation to BC Housing's emergency shelters. It was hoped that the environment of criminal mayhem would be mitigated when BC Housing took emergency action and established 2 shelters to temporarily house many from Discontent City. At face value, rather than resolving problems, to some, this action seemed to simply spread the problem further through the community. Residents and neighboring businesses spoke out through the media, especially social media, and this emergency action was claimed as a failed experiment. That's when we wanted to step in. We responded to the impact in the business community by establishing a field survey program, visiting businesses within a kilometer first of 250 terminal to gauge the responses on a face-to-face basis. We subsequently targeted the businesses around Labview, where we found even more discouraging results, which was possibly due to the fact there were far more businesses to potentially be impacted, including Country Club, Brooks Landing, Rock City, and all of the businesses along Bowen Road. We submitted reports on our findings to Mayor Council, Senior Government, RCMP, and other appropriate bodies. These are all attached as appendices to this presentation. Settlement of shelter residents. There was the hope of calming as shelter residents settled, but it seemed the only point of optimism that we could find was an increasing resiliency demonstrated by business operators through heightened tolerance levels and the slow resignation and acceptance of increased costs of loss protection through security measures, loss of business activity, and challenges felt to personal safety and security to workers and customers. This sense of helplessness was heightened by the fact there were limitations to what one could do to protect yourself, and those most likely to cause problems knew exactly what they could get away with and how far they could go. BC Housing shelter evictions. During the settlement process, BC Housing shelter project managers, Pacifica and Island Crisis Care, were pleased to announce they were removing some of the worst predators and troublemakers from the shelters. Honorable. But with nowhere else to go, many of these people returned to downtown Nanaimo or into the bushes surrounding other business centers and shelter locations. The Old City Quarter. It's no surprise that some of those removed from the shelters chose Wesley Street behind the city's SARC building as their next destination, a fact that all of you are too familiar with. Area merchants proactively reached out to us to share their current experiences, including, again, losses to theft, property damages, and customers frightened to the point of not continuing to patronize the businesses there. Add the cost of borrowing doors and windows and adding expensive video and remote security technology as the new cost of doing business. Out of frustration, area business leaders hosted an information meeting at the Harbour City Theatre where many spoke out for the continuing viability of their businesses and the risk to their life's investment in a business. Downtown and the night market. The Chamber launched the night market in June of 2018 with Discontent City in full form. One of the reasons for launching this event was to shine a positive light in our city centre and to outnumber the undesirable activity on our streets with highly positive activity. Businesses in the area also needed a positive boost in order to help them survive the impact of Discontent City. So we became accustomed to dealing with this population of street people in 2018. In 2019, however, the issues from street entrenched folks seemed quite different. This year, a significant criminal element was at work downtown, and our security strength needed to be increased to protect vendors and our audience and at least help them feel more secure. Meetings with mall managers. This past summer, a meeting of shopping center and mall managers was held at Woodgrove with the Chamber and MLA Sheila Malcolmson in attendance. The problems and challenges they shared are sadly similar to those we collected in our surveys. All of them note that not only are security issues increasing in frequency, the level of seriousness of these security encounters is rising. Repetitive encounters with the same problem individuals are common, and it's at a level never experienced before. Rising crime, homelessness, substance abuse crisis. We have a multiplicity of problems on our hands, and it's time to acknowledge and confront that beast on several levels. Many business operators, shopping center and mall managers especially, argue that the rise in homelessness does not run directly parallel to rising crime rates. Our RCMP do an incredible job, but we have a societal problem with addictive, destructive drugs and our systemic, historic response to that. It's time to seriously consider attacking this as a public health problem, much more than a criminal problem. The BC Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions is about to embark on pilot projects that incorporate new approaches to these problems all communities are facing. The same ministry is also piloting reintroduction of institutionalized approaches to housing and caring for those individuals with significant and serious mental health challenges. We support any and all new approaches that may provide relief, since the old way of dealing with this simply isn't working. The impact on economic prosperity. Every business district and every business in the city may have a sense they are under attack by some massive criminal conspiracy. People in neighborhoods outside of the inner city are reporting significantly more losses from break-ins, theft from cars, theft from garages, yards, and sheds. Presentation from Superintendent Miller reinforced this. This property loss obviously impacts our community's productivity and our GDP. It negatively impacts our attractiveness as a business destination and badly damages our brand, which we are working hard to rebuild at this time. I have some recommendations for the City of Nanaimo, and this isn't a to-do list to roll up your sleeves and get at it, guys. Recognizing you are the policymakers for our city, these are the things that we hope we will all get together and try to implement. We need to put all-out pressure on senior levels of government while we expedite opportunities for problem solving at the local level. We need to remain open to pilot projects and creative solutions. We need to treat substance abuse as a public health issue. We need to take steps to resolve homelessness, already described in the Homeless Action Plan. 2 councillors are on the HHTF, and we welcome moving forward with you and helping to implement that Homeless Action Plan. We need to recognize and respond appropriately to mental health challenges. We need to invest in crime prevention and enforcement. We need to seek strengthened prosecutorial and judicial action. We need to enlist the aid of the corrections system in rehabilitation and seek other ways that we can implement rehabilitative practices. We need to work to prevent increases in the number of we need to prevent increases in the number of homeless by investing in social programs managed by local nonprofits while we aggressively pursue strategies and tactics to provide affordable housing, especially for those that need it most, our aging population. Then, as for the next steps for the Chamber of Commerce, we will continue to work as a member of the Homeless Coalition and the CACs. We will continue serving on Mayor and Council's Health and Housing Task Force. We are currently in the process of partnering with VIU on an applied research project to better understand the economic reality of homelessness and solving it. And we will continue to report to Council about the impacts on the business community and our concerns and progress that we will be making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. We have several questions, starting with Mayor Krog, followed by Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smythe. I want to extend my thanks on behalf of Council to the Chamber of Commerce for the work it's done and for the partnerships you've engaged in this community as we face what is a crisis. I'm going to state some obvious facts for those who are listening, not for the edification of you, because you're well aware of them, I think. The estimates vary, but something between 500 and 600 homeless people in the city of Nanaimo. For a population of our size, that's dramatic in comparison to the city of Vancouver, which identifies 2,200 homeless people with a population of 675,000. Having said that, not everybody who's homeless is a drug addict, mentally ill, or engaging in criminal behavior, but there is a correlation that cannot be ignored. Having said that, I can tell you that myself and Mr. Rudolph and Mr. Lindsay will be meeting with Minister Robinson on Thursday in Victoria to emphasize again to the province how serious it is here, how we face significant numbers in comparison to other communities, and the challenges that we face. Everything you've said around solutions, I think we all, generally speaking, agree and support. And I am very conscious of the fact that those who've been victims of crime are not everyone in our community. Quite frankly, if you're running a law office, for instance, in a business downtown, you probably won't suffer any criminal behavior. But if you're running a car dealership or a shop or you're selling goods, chances are you will. And so I think, and again, fair to say that Council is very conscious of those in the community who operate businesses in what are difficult times facing this social disorder, are very conscious of the fact that some of them face particular burdens. Frankly, you can't always pass on the cost of increased security and all of the attendant insurance costs and all of the problems that go with it. So I think what I want to say is not only are we sympathetic, we're supportive and appreciative of what you've done. And we as Council, as you've already mentioned, have taken steps around the Health and Housing Task Force to try and address some of these issues within our jurisdiction. But I encourage, as you have done, to engage our MLAs locally, to engage the provincial government, particularly those cabinet ministers responsible, as you've continued to do, and as we continue to do. This crisis, and it is a crisis, is not going to go away. There's reference to the opioid crisis, but I remind everyone that in as much as we have an opioid crisis for those who are suffering from serious addiction and their families and the impact it has in the community, we also have a crisis in terms of the numbers of people who are being victimized by criminals, or criminal behavior, I should say, committed by people trying to feed habits that are overwhelming for them, and at the same time, we don't have the detox beds and the continuum of care that is necessary to help them get out of that addiction, which leads to the criminal behavior. I wish I could say something more positive, but you've stated the, I don't mean this disrespectfully, you've stated the obvious, but you've stated it eloquently, and again, thank you tonight for this.
Thank you, Mayor Krog.
And Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Two questions. The first one is, you mentioned about our ability to attract businesses. Are you seeing a downturn in that in Nanaimo because of what we're facing?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of that?
You said that there's an ability to attract businesses based on location, et cetera, et cetera. Are we seeing a downturn in our ability to attract new businesses because of what we're facing with our homeless situation and crime situation?
You could only report back on that on an anecdotal basis, but I have to tell you that I travel a lot on chamber business around BC and across Canada. And I find it stunning when I talk to somebody from New Brunswick who says, I hear you have a real homeless problem there. I'm like, really? That's the news that makes it through to New Brunswick? And I'm talking to people in a business environment, and in a room full of 300 chamber executives, and that's this distilled comment that comes back at me. So I have to say, yeah, we are, right? But, you know, we have to fight like every community to attract businesses to move here and develop our economy. So everything that we can do that would put a positive spin on who we are and on our brand is helpful.
And one other point, you're talking about the rehab that we're pushing it. I mean, we're very fortunate here that we do have Guthrie program at NCC, which is a fabulous program. But the problem that I see is a lot of times these people get healthy and they can't get jobs. So maybe that's something that you can do with your partners at the chamber, is realize that once these people get healthy, try and hire them. Because if they don't get a job, they're going to go back to that lifestyle. So like, I think it's really important that when people do get the opportunity to get healthy, that they have also the opportunity to be hired. You know, sometimes we've got to take a risk on them, or they're going to go back to that lifestyle because they get disgruntled, discouraged, and they start using again. So I think it's really important that when we talk about this, that we do have to take a chance. You know, like the Two Men with Big Hearts was formed for people getting out of prison, and it's a very successful program. You know, I know Councillor Gisselbrecht can speak to it better than I can, having worked in there. The importance for these people to have jobs when they finish their recovery is really critical. So I really hope people will think about that. Thank you.
I really agree with you on that, and we will continue to work with groups like John Howard Society, who's here sitting in support this evening, and do more about that. We do know some businesses that specifically, because of their past personal experience, they actually go out and seek people that they can employ and help rehabilitate. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Smythe, thank you very much for your presentation. Unfortunately, I think it's not information that is new to this council. It's something that we continue to struggle with, and we focus very much on it at the Health and Housing Task Force. I didn't receive the notes from your presentation, so when you said you had recommendations, I was quickly trying to write them, but I actually don't have them, so if you could share those with staff so we could get them, that would be great. To that point, there was quite a list of recommendations, and I'm wondering if you can pull out one or two that you would specifically like council to focus on. Possible?
Pull those out and present them to you as when we resend this in?
Verbally, just right now, based on your work with the businesses, what rose to the surface as the priority to do?
Well, certainly remaining open to pilot projects and creative solutions. We've heard the province has some ideas there right now, and if they are looking for communities to test these pilot projects in, then I'd be going like that to them, like pick me, pick me, pick me. And some of those were around substance abuse, and some of those were around institutionalized mental health care again. It's outside our bailiwick, of course, but I think that we need to emphasize to our senior levels of government, especially the province, that it's really time to seek strength in prosecutorial and judicial action. And we know that our RCMP does fantastic work, and they are taxed beyond what they should ever be. However, there's a point at which they can't do anything else because nothing goes beyond. They can't get cases sworn in court. They can't get court time. Stuff doesn't get past the prosecutor's office, and if it does, it makes it to the judge, into a court. And, you know, there's so many opportunities for it not to be taken through to an ultimate ending that's going to help everybody. Mm-hmm. The person who's perpetrated the crime, the victim of the crime, and the community as a whole. Okay. So that's an area that I think that council needs to work on, and aggressively pursuing strategies and tactics to provide affordable housing, especially to our aging population. One of the most important things we need to be prioritizing now, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this over the coming weeks at the Health and Housing Task Force, is how we start reversing this trend of homelessness. You know, we're sitting in an economy where house prices right now are over double what they were. My home, your home, all of our homes are worth double what they were 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And how do we sustain that real estate market moving forward like that while people, and the good doctor just said, 125% increase in those over 75. Those people, a lot of those people no longer have a source of income sufficient to pay their property taxes. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do with that segment of the population so that we're not incurring hugely expensive costs to help them when they become homeless. How can we prevent them from becoming homeless? What do we put in place? So that's an extremely high priority on my list of things that the city should
Can I
do.
follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Just so you're aware, the city actually has identified to the provincial government that we are ready and willing and able to contemplate any innovative pilot projects. So that's something we have done. I really look forward to continuing this conversation at the Health and Housing Task Force. And I do just want to say to one point you made that I couldn't agree with more, and that's that I've had the opportunity to connect with some local business owners downtown, and the resiliency of our business community is something that really stands out for me in the midst of this crisis. So, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to Mr. Smythe. First of all, thank you for your presentation, and thank you, Mr. Smythe, for coming not just with a synopsis of past history and problems, but with some concrete proposals. And I don't think most of them are new to us, but it's good to hear them. And I think they are proposals that we all need to keep in mind as we search together for problems. Over the past 4 years, we've seen, in my opinion, an opioid crisis evolve into a housing crisis, evolve into a mental health crisis, evolve into an upcoming, perhaps, crisis of the criminality that's associated with all of the above. And they are huge problems to deal with. We hear a lot from our residents, but I think it's also important that we hear the voice of the business community. And the business community has been extremely patient as we try to find solutions or work towards solutions. And we all recognize that's not going to be easy or quick. But I think the business community has an important role to play in that, and I appreciate the fact that you're indicating a willingness to partner with whoever wants to partner with you to continue the search for those solutions. So you've come with some practical ideas. I know you're part of the Chamber is part of the homeless task force, Housing and Homeless Task Force. We appreciate that, and I just want to assure you that from my view, this council is committed to looking at everything that we can find to work towards improving the situation for our citizens, which of course includes our business community. So thank you.
Thank you for that commitment. I want to add, and perhaps you spoke of business resiliency, and so did Councillor Hemmons, but wanted to add, we do walkabout to every business downtown about once a month, bringing new issues up with them and talking about our plans to aid and advocate for downtown. And on our last trip through downtown, nearly half of those that we encountered without coaching said, if there's anything you can do, can you get a day center open downtown so that these folks have some place to go? Can you do that really fast because it's getting cold out? So the business community is not adverse to helping, and they certainly share that compassion that I talked about, and they care for these residents of our community who are basically helpless and homeless. So, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Very quickly, thank you, Your Worship, and I agree with you, and we have a very compassionate, caring community. Unfortunately, sometimes compassion fatigue starts to set in, and that's understandable. But I think the other point that you've brought to our attention, Mr. Smythe, is that the problems that we're facing have not only a social impact on our city, but also an economic impact. And we have to bear that in mind as well. So again, thank you for your suggestions, and you're working with us.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Smythe. Thank you again for your presentation. When you were talking about how do we prevent people from becoming homeless, the presentation just prior to you had a lot of that in there. And again, it's the social determinants of health, child poverty, children who are vulnerable. I personally think that we need to spend more time and more money at that area because those are our future homeless people. And we need to stop the cycle at the beginning. So that is very important. The other thing I've found out of this conversation we've been having for the better part of a year and a half now is we're not going to be solving this problem by individuals doing things. We're going to be solving it by a partnership.
Yes.
So with that, I kind of like put you a little bit on the spot here, as a person who can be a partner with us and is a partner with us. In terms of affordable housing, I know the mayor has spoken against this in the past, but do you think there's an appetite with the developers in our city to look at building into their developments, as residential developments as they're building, below market rental housing, affordable housing as part of their building? Because we're doing a lot of building a residential place right now, but none of it's, that the commercial folks are doing is below market. The other thing is, we had a really long conversation today about bylaws. And I believe that we need more bylaw officers in the area of working on social disorder. That in order to do that, it would require possibly raising taxes. So do you think there's an appetite amongst the business community for that as well?
So I'll address your first question, your first subject matter. I'm not a development expert by any stretch of the imagination. I know that that does work and can work in communities. So maybe some examination of best practices from other communities where mixed-use developments and mixed developments can have, stratified living. That's a bigger discussion than I came armed to handle. Is there an appetite for increased taxes? Never. Nobody wants to hear that your taxes are going up. It's, I feel that we're fairly taxed, especially at the residential level. I would argue that we are not so much at the commercial level. That's for future discussion. As you know, that's kind of an open subject for us to go over. But I think that as residents, as businesses, we have to face the fact that this requires investment. And as I said here, invest in these things. Yes, it requires money to be spent. But it may require money to be also channeled differently, or expenses to be prioritized differently. And again, those are conversations that we'll be having over the longer term. And I look forward and I thank Mayor and Council for inviting me to sit on the Health and Housing Task Force, and I thank the social service community for inviting the Chamber to sit at the Homeless Coalition table as well, so that we can contribute comments and our thoughts to those ideas, like, okay, so does the business community want to take on the cost? Or how do we share that? Or who do we share with? Or how do we find it? How do we do it? How do we make it as cost effective, whatever action we take, how do we make it as cost effective as possible? Thank you, Councillor.
Next, we have Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Here.
Thank you, Chair Turley. Many thanks for the presentation, Mr. Smythe. Just one question. I imagine that you have many different conversations on this topic, as I do, and probably everybody at this table do, and there's a whole varied of opinions, but one thing that starts to become clear is that there's also a lot of confusion about who is responsible for what, jurisdictional issues, but at the end of the day, everybody wants answers, and we're all in this together. So I'm just curious, do you have any, knowing your background a little bit too, do you have any thoughts on how we can create opportunities for community dialogue to sort of clear up that confusion, build unity around messaging and directing that message to the ears that it needs to be heard? The province, so we can secure those pilot projects, so we can build the housing that we need, get the health infrastructure that we desperately require, and also advocate for a justice system that's focused on restoration. There seems to be a lack of space for that conversation right now. Do you have any thoughts, or does the Chamber have any thoughts on how that could be achieved?
Well, I think we need to focus on those, on who owns what in this whole world of homelessness, social disorder, crime, etc. Where's the federal government? What do they own? Where's the province? What do they own? Where are we, and what can we do to do the best work possible we can as a municipal entity? And then how do we relate to, and where do we go to for those other things? Then I think that's maybe a challenge for communications by council and the Health and Housing Task Force to say, we are going to do this with the province in order to achieve that. We are going to do this with the federal government in order to achieve that. And we are going to do this in partnership with agencies and organizations in our community to this. And I think we need to repeat that always, because it's too easy to just say, oh, it all belongs to feds, or it all belongs to province, you know, or we're overwhelmed, we can't do anything. And more than just say it is somebody else's problem, we need to identify whose problem it is, and not so much problem, but you know, whose challenge is this to resolve? So I think it's a communications task, so that once again, like fighting homelessness doesn't mean we fight crime. Fighting crime means something else than fighting homelessness. And so we need to establish that clarity. We need to establish clarity around who can do what to help us, instead of just saying it's someone else.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. You'd mentioned about seniors. I just wanted to say that under the previous council 2 years ago, we did approve over 250 units of affordable housing for seniors and subsidized. So there is movement on that. I would like to see movement on, being built, and they're just starting to hit the permit stage now. So that has been looked at, a portion of it, and I certainly would like to see more around families that are really struggling as well, and I'm sure that'll come to the table. But one thing you talked about, when you talk about who does it belong to, I mean, we can argue that till we're blue in the face. I mean, it depends who you talk to. When I talk to the people that in the north end who I represent the majority, they're dead against our property taxes being used for that. They want them used for your basic services because that's what they want. They want their roads, they want their, water, that kind of stuff, police, fire. That's what they feel they pay their provincial tax dollars for. But perhaps maybe more things we could look at is how do we attract the people that are working in the mental health field, because I personally feel, unlike that you'd said earlier, I think we started with a mental health crisis first, and then it went into an opioid crisis. I think the mental health crisis was long before we got to a opioid or a criminal crisis. It started with mental health, and I think until we can start getting supports for our youth, it's only going to grow. So, I just want to say that this council is 100% behind. If we can get the foundry here, we're all supportive of it, and that's a great step in the right. And we've all, and I think you've heard us speak formally before that if we can get projects here that are going to help assist with this, we're all for it. It's just that we have to balance our budgets too, right? Like we're already looking at a significant tax increase without even getting into the nice-to-haves.
Absolutely. And maybe reflecting back on your question earlier about businesses coming to town and being discouraged because maybe we're looked down upon, but we are working in other arenas, as you all know, in economic development. And the point of that being to broaden the tax base and to build up that tax base. So now it's not the 6,000 businesses, 40% of which are home-based, that are contributing to our tax base. It becomes much greater than that. And we're providing then more employment opportunities so that those people who are having difficulties, who are, dedicated and focused on their own rehabilitation, their own health, that they now have some place to go, because we're bringing people here who are employing more people and able to sustain the taxes that we know we need to, the tax revenue that we know we need to acquire in order to achieve some of these.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no further questions, so thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Smythe, and it's very refreshing to hear your side of it.
Thank you, Chair, and
you.
to Council through you. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, and I apologize in advance because I'm probably going to butcher her name here, but Dr. Natarajan, a cardiologist from the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital, Cardiac Care in Nanaimo, and sir, you need a clicker? Or?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Can you hear me?
Yep, good. We're on.
So I represent the Medical Staff Association, which comprises all the physicians in the hospital in Nanaimo. And I know that my colleague, Dr. Dave Copeland, is going to do a slightly bigger presentation about the requirements of Nanaimo Hospital, and that's going to happen at some point next month. So my focus, because my specialty is cardiology or the heart, I'm just going to focus on one thing, which is the lack of certain emergency cardiac services in the hospital. Sorry, how do I advance the slide? Okay. So I want to emphasize on these two things. I know these two terms or phrases may not mean much right now, but I'll explain as we go along. So cath lab, which is basically it's a cardiac catheterization laboratory, so we call it a cath lab. Nobody uses the full name for it. So this is where we do angiograms and stents. And the only cath lab or cath labs are on the island are situated in the Royal Jubilee Hospital. So we don't have cath labs in Nanaimo. So we have to send everybody south of the Malahide, and people probably know this. And primary angioplasty is basically stenting, emergency stenting when someone comes in with a heart attack, and not wasting time with conventional therapies. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I just want you to remember those two things because the focus of the talk is those two things. So just a brief background. So if you already know some of this, I'm not trying to tell you something you already know, but I just want to familiarize people with certain things. So how are heart attacks? What causes heart attacks? So sudden blockage in the artery blocks off the blood flow. So I say sudden, but in a lot of these cases, almost everyone, they have some pre-existing abnormality in these little blood vessels. These are very slender vessels, by the way. They, at their widest portion, they measure about 5 millimeter, half a centimeter. That's all they are. And as they flow down, the downstream portion gets smaller and smaller. As they branch out into, subdivide and subdivide, the arteries get smaller and smaller. So they're very small. So, which means that the stents that go in the coronary arteries are also very, very small. So these blockages, if they happen suddenly, nobody exactly knows why. There is some pre-existing furring up in the arteries, and suddenly, one day, a clot suddenly forms and blocks out the artery. And that's what causes a heart attack, because the heart muscle, which is the pump, doesn't get enough blood and screams out in pain, and that's what you feel as discomfort in the chest and causes people to choke and the lungs fill up with fluid. It's certainly not a pleasant sensation, but it's the good thing is they get themselves in the hospital to get care. So that's the warning sign. So what do we do in the hospital? We obviously take a history, physically examine the patients, and we do a certain enzyme level. It's called troponin, and this is an enzyme which is normally undetectable in the blood, but when there is any damage to the heart cells, the cells break down, release the protein into the blood, and we can sense it, we can assay it. So any troponin found in the blood is a sign of a heart attack. And then we do scans to see, what the damage is. So, and what do we do to treat the heart attacks? So, so if you look at the top point, the standard of care right now is to, so at this, I just want to be clear that we're talking about heart attacks are a spectrum. So there is no single heart attack is the same. No two heart attacks are the same. They're all very different. And depending on what the level of the blockage is, if it's an upstream blockage and a complete blockage of the artery results in what we call as a major heart attack or a big heart attack. If it's a relatively smaller blockage or a smaller branch is involved, then a side branch is involved, then we call it a small heart attack. Small heart attacks, no heart attack is small, but when you say small heart attack, it means that you don't have to be sent into the cath lab to have a stent as an emergency. You can wait until the next day. So we treat people with blood thinning medication, all the relevant therapies, and then we send them to Victoria for having an angiogram, a stent the next day after, which is fine. So the ones I'm referring to are the big heart attacks where there's complete blockage. And some of these cases, patients present with a cardiac arrest because it happens so suddenly. All these stories you hear about people collapsing on the street, clutching at their chest, or people just having a cardiac arrest and they're being resuscitated. A lot of them have suffered heart attacks, sudden blockages in the arteries, and unfortunately, in some people, the initial presentation is this cardiac arrest, and they unfortunately don't recover. But a lot of these people can be saved with the right treatments. It's very time sensitive. So if you actually take these people into a cath lab and put a stent to unblock the artery, that's the most effective way. And that's the standard of care. And that's the guidelines, as per the guidelines in not just the Canadian College, but also the European Society, American Heart Association, everywhere. But unfortunately, we don't have that facility in Nanaimo because we don't have a cath lab. So what we use here is we use a clot clot buster medication, which is basically an infusion. We just give the infusion to try and break the clot down. That's initial, you can call it first aid treatment, and wait for the next day or the day after to send the patient down to Victoria for the definitive procedure, which is this stenting. So the stenting in the case of a heart attack has to happen within 2 hours of first medical contact. So, which is why it's almost impossible for us to, even if we put the patient in an ambulance or even in a chopper and send them down, we may not be able to meet that time limit, because it takes a while for the patients to be transported, taken there, offloaded into the cath lab, and then for people to, get on with the procedure. So we cannot meet those deadlines. So the same thing, just a diagram. So that's what is primary angioplasty. So basically saying that not using these medications and going straight to do stenting is better. And why is it better? It's been shown in numerous research studies done over thousands of patients across several countries in the last 10 to 20 years. So stenting and unblocking the artery straight away is better. It's more likely to unblock the artery. It's more effective, which means better survival in the long term, which because of less damage to the heart. So also I want to say at this point, why is it important to unblock the artery? So what happens? Why not just leave the artery as it is? So the heart, unlike skin, cannot regenerate. So once it's damaged, the muscle is dead. It heals by a scar. The muscle does not reform. It does not regenerate. So that's why the organs like the heart and brain, kidneys and liver, once they're damaged for good. And that's the unfortunate. The key is to prevent this from happening or rescue, do the right procedures at a very early stage to minimize damage. So the accepted standard of care is the primary angioplasty, which we do not have. But yeah, the fact of the matter is most of the developed G7 world, including most parts of urban Canada, have access to primary angioplasty. So I just want to point out there is a, oops. Yeah. Is there a pointer somewhere? No pointer. Okay. Okay, so the top, it's just an angiogram. If you look at the one on the top, you can see that there is an abrupt blockage in the artery, and you can compare it to the one at the bottom, which is after the stent has been placed and the artery has been unblocked. You can actually see the artery. So this is actually the main artery supplying the heart. It's called the left anterior descending, or LAD. It supplies 50% of the heart. So if that artery gets blocked, there is a very good chance that you'll have a cardiac arrest and may never recover, if treatment is not given in time. So that's the thing we are talking about. We are talking about very time sensitive and very serious consequences. So this is a heart scan or an echocardiogram. So this is I'm just trying to demonstrate the difference between the heart pump affected by a heart attack and a normal pump. So on the left side, to my left side, you can see the abnormality. So the pump is very sluggish. You can see it's struggling. It's quite, it's a little bit wobbly, and that's because it's been affected. This is a picture from someone who's been affected by a heart attack, and they have scar. So the pump is very sluggish. And I would say the function on that is roughly half of what it should be. And compare it to the one on the right side. And so that's a normal scan, and that's how robust, that's how the pump should be. So you can see that once you have a substantial heart attack, things can, once the damage is done, it's irreversible. So this is another, I don't want to dwell too long on this. This is an MRI scan, and we have, by the way, we have good imaging facilities in Nanaimo. We have a lot of good diagnostic facilities. It's the treatment aspect which is lacking. So the cardiac MRI displays scar, and the blue arrow points to the white area at the bottom. So scar appears white on an MRI scan, and that's not good. So you need to see healthy heart muscle, and the one on the bottom you can probably see the comparison, the difference. So once scar forms, it's irreversible, and the scar doesn't function, so the pump function is reduced. So this is something, the next level. So the same kind of heart attack affected heart pump. And what you can see, if at the top end, if you look, there is a little bulge at the tip inside the chamber, and I'm sorry I can't point it out, but that's actually a clot. So a clot forms. So whenever there is sluggishness in the heart pump and the blood flow is not brisk as it should be, the blood stagnates and clots tend to form. And so this can lead to a completely new problem, which is what happens if the clot finds its way into the central circulation. You can all guess it can go to any part of the body, particularly the brain, and it can cause a stroke and cause a new set of problems. So all these are consequences of damage to the pump, which can potentially be minimized or prevented. Okay, and here's another big problem. So what do we do in Nanaimo to treat heart attacks? We don't do stents. We do use what's called as a clot buster. This is a super strong blood thinner, which is given as an infusion. And this basically, it's like a shotgun approach. It basically completely thins out the blood in the hope that the clot inside the heart will dissipate. And as I've told you, this clot inside the artery, this is a 5 millimeter artery, a tiny artery in one part of the body, but the blood is being thinned out pretty much everywhere else in the body, including the brain circulation. So if you have an aneurysm in the brain or some injury or something that nobody knows about, you can bleed from there. You can bleed from an ulcer in the stomach that you didn't know about, or some cancer somewhere which you didn't know about. But this is the worst possible scenario, and these are real pictures. These are real instances. So this is somebody who had a massive bleed in the brain, and you can see the white area the white spot you can see marked by the arrow. That's actually a huge patch of blood in this patient's brain, which happened after a clot buster was administered. So, and this is something which can be completely avoided, because if you don't use the clot buster, go straight to the cath lab, get a stent, this can be prevented. Imagine if this was a 70-year-old person who was functioning normally. And even if you had not treated the heart attack, they might have survived. They might have been left with a damaged heart, but they would have survived probably for the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. But this is basically, this can completely transform their life trajectory. So this is what I'm talking about. These are serious consequences, and a number of such instances, unfortunate events have happened. So once again, coming back to the main focus, which is the cath lab. So this is where the procedures can be done, and this is what we need here, and we don't have. So this is not rocket science or the 21st, 22nd century. This is something which is widely available in most of the developed world, and I'll tell you why. So I'm just going to draw a comparison with the UK. So I did a lot of training in the UK. Both my kids were born in the UK, and we moved to Canada, and we are very, very blessed to be here. 6th year in practice in Nanaimo. Don't want to leave this place, but I do have a good idea of what happens in the UK, and I've been around most of England, Scotland, so I've worked in so many different hospitals, small hospitals, big hospitals, world famous centers, wide gamut. But so I just want to point out, saying that UK is a very small country, by the way. Landmass wise, if you from Newcastle in the north to Brighton in the south is the length of Newcastle Island. It's how small the UK is. And the population is double that of the entire country, entire Canada. It's about 65 million in the UK, and we are about, I guess, 36 or 37 million here. So it's a big country. It's a big country in terms of population. So they have about 98 cath labs in the UK, 98 centers. Look how densely they're packed. And I just want to point your attention to the north half of the map, which is Scotland. And Scotland is a fairly sizable portion of the UK, population 5 million. It's a small fraction of the entire UK. And they have about 8 centers with cath labs, 8 centers, of which 2 are Edinburgh and Glasgow, which are very, very big centers. They have multiple cath labs, lots of things. They do very state-of-the-art. Each one of them, Edinburgh is like St. Paul's and Glasgow is like St. Paul's. And Dundee, north of Scotland, is a bit like Victoria. So they have many centers just within Scotland for a small population. So I'm talking about the UK because it's a publicly funded system like ours. So that's why I draw a comparison. I'm not comparing it with the country south of the border because of obvious reasons. Our medicine is very similar to the British medicine because of the way it's funded. It's free to the end user. They only pay for prescriptions, just like we do here. So it's very similar. So, if Scotland can have about 8 centers, we have just about 4 in the whole of BC. And you can see that, and what happened in the last 10 years in the UK is they established a lot of centers when it became quite obvious that the stenting was the way forward and they were not supposed to be wasting time with all this clotbuster and all other voodoo. They established a lot of centers in strategic areas so that all the population can be covered. So right now, 97% of the UK's population of 65 million have access to primary angioplasty. Unless you're living in some remote corners such as, say, Shetland or someplace, you will get to a cath lab when you have a heart attack. You're going to go straight into the cath lab. You're not going to get any of the funny juice which is going to thin your blood down. You're going to get a stent, you're going to get your artery unblocked and go home. So that's not just, so if you think UK is good, let's take a look at the rest of Europe. So if you look at this table, it's the number of cath lab tables per million population. So UK we thought was very good, but look, they have about 5 cath lab tables per million people, but look, go further down and look at Sweden, look at France. Look at Greece, look at Germany and Italy, way off the ballpark. They have excellent facilities. Everybody is covered. And Germany is not a small country. It's about 85 million people. It's a big country. France has got about nearly 70 million, and they are a big country. So they're not, they're obviously smaller than Canada, but they still have challenges, geographical challenges. They're much bigger than the UK, but they're able to make it, because they have the infrastructure has been put into position. So we'll skip that. Okay, so let's look at our situation. So you can see, I was talking about the 8 centers in Scotland, and look how many we have, 4. And they're so wide apart, they're so spread out. And if you look at the axis for the lower part of the table, if you look at British Columbia, and only about 60–65% of the people have access to cath labs, compared to nearly 100%, more than 90–95% in most of Europe. And I'm sure it's pretty much the same in the States as well. So what does having a cath lab locally, what does it do for us? So primary angioplasty, so we can give state-of-the-art care for heart attacks. We have shorter waiting times for angiograms and stents. We don't have to send everybody for a stent to Victoria. So they did about, I believe, about 4,500 angiograms in Victoria last year. So roughly about 50% of those are from north of the Malahide, about 2,500, let's say 2,000. So 2,000 people would be saved from going down south of the Malahide. So you can think about all the consequences it has, the waiting times, it shortens waiting times, it saves on transportation, it makes life easier for people, right? And lesser number of ambulance rides, lesser emergency transfers, we don't have to use the choppers very often, shorter hospital stays, improved patient safety. Why is it more safe? Because better care, shorter waiting times. You're not waiting months and months on the waiting list. So if I refer somebody for an angiogram from my office, somebody who I know has blockages, because I've scanned them, I've done all the other possible tests locally, 3 months. And if you present with one of those small heart attacks, which I was talking about earlier, you get admitted to hospital, 1 week, So I've got 2 or 3 patients sitting on the floor, well over a week. I've been seeing them every single day, apologizing to them, saying, I'm sorry, we haven't heard from Victoria, I'm sorry. It's frustrating. It's not just frustrating, you're basically delaying treatment, and staying in hospital obviously can cause other problems. You're exposed to lots of infection, stress, all that kind of thing. So why does this, I know that, we believe in a centralized approach, but that's not working for us. The hub and spoke model, which everybody talks about for healthcare, will not work. Why? Because the so-called hub is in one end of the island. That's why. It's common sense. So long road trips should be kept to a minimum. Ambulances are not cheap, by the way. So every chop or transfer costs about close to $4,000 per hour. So even if you say 2 hours per trip, because people have to come, take the patient, transport them back, go back to Vancouver, takes a couple of hours minimum. So about $8,000 per transfer. So if you do that over, say, 200 to 300 patients a year, so it's well over $1 million. And imagine, you save that money, a cath lab would cost about $4 or $5 million to set up. And of course, there are running costs, but the government, you bill the government, the MSP, the hospital makes money, healthcare makes money. So it's a no-brainer. I don't know why it's not happening. So think about it this way. Why do we have 2 ferry terminals? Why don't we put everybody in a bus and send them to Victoria, Schwartz Bay? Why do we not do that? We don't, for obvious reasons. The same way, we shouldn't be putting people in an ambulance and sending them to Victoria for every single procedure. So that's all it is. So here, this is what patients hear all the time. And are we living in the wrong postcode? So think about it. For the same amount of tax, the council tax, the income taxes, and everything else that you pay, property taxes. I think property taxes in North Cowichan, I believe, are higher than certain neighborhoods in Victoria. I know that for a fact. But so why are we getting second-grade medical care? What's the reason? So it's like going into a car dealership and saying, oh, I got this check. And I say, oh, you live north of the Malahat. Oh, you're just getting a used car. Your friend down south in Victoria gets a brand new car. It's just a silly analogy, but that's exactly what it is. And what do we need to do? My job is to make people aware, because what I see is that people are generally, they know that there is something not right, but they don't know the specifics. So that's why I'm here today, to give people the specifics of what is lacking and why we need to have these things here. So we need to make some noise. The health authority may not be able to do much. This has to happen at a provincial level. So Cardiac Services BC, provincial level. They have to decide to set up the service here. And until they make that decision, until they take the plunge, it's not going to happen. And we have, on average, about 3 to 4 of these big heart attacks north of the Malahat every week. So think about it. 3 to 4 people every single week are receiving suboptimal care. That could be any one of us, our relatives. And we could be putting them at significant harm by giving them treatments that have been outdated in most of the Western world. So we have to think about it and act soon to make this happen. So please donate, think about it, please make some noise. And also, if you're willing, you're always welcome. If people know about the Hospital Foundation, and they'll be very happy to have your contributions. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you, sir. We have one question anyway. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, through you to the doctor, thank you very much for your presentation. I think you just gave us all red pill there. My question to you is, in Victoria, do residents have to wait for a day for an angioplasty if they have a heart attack?
No. So when they have one of those big heart attacks, they get taken straight into the cath lab in the Jubilee, even if it's at 3 in the morning. So it's a 24/7 service for them. So 50% of the people, which is living south of the Malahat, have access to that, and we don't. And the only reason is we don't have the cath lab here. And as I said, the problem is the time sensitiveness. So we cannot get people across within that 90-minute to 2-hour time frame. even if we have choppers, because of weather situation, and then people may be very sick to be put on a chopper and sent there. So they have to, it has to be local. But yeah, the answer to your question is yes, they do have 24/7 access to the cath lab.
And they pay the same taxes we do, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, probably less compared to North Cowichan.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very timely. I know there's concerns. A couple of us have spouses going through health issues at the moment, and
Okay.
I'm getting used to the travel to Victoria. So,
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
okay, so next is delegations, and I believe we're going to have a break at 6:30.
That's correct, Chair. There's a scheduled recess at 6:30,
So we'll
so
carry on then for the time being. Okay, so delegations, each delegation has 5 minutes. The first one up is Daniel Appel, the delegation regarding the planning process. And welcome, and I got to get the lights working here. Go ahead and introduce yourself first, and I'll get the lights going.
Okay, my name's Dan Appel. I've been before council many times. I wanted to talk about a different kind of planning method, and I did have a lot of prep involved. I don't think I want to go through all of it, so I'll just go to the meat of it, try and get the red pill over quickly, and we'll go towards talking directly about the method itself. The method itself is intended to be evidence-based, transparent, effective, producing results that are relevant and with agency. Essentially, it is overall easier to do than the methods that we're employing right now. And I think it presents to council a much more useful document so that you can make planning decisions in a proper way. It also presents to subsequent designers the information that's useful to them as well. But we do have to understand that planning is more a project of economics, and it's within that scope, planning has some salience, and beyond there, it doesn't really work very well. So the PREP stands for purpose. A planner describes everything, and it really puts everything out front with the proposal. Everything that the planner knows about a particular site or a particular problem is presented to council at that point. And it's just everything what the planner knows. It's all their expertise. It might involve some pre-research, it might be something specific to that particular site or that particular problem, but it's essentially everything they know, and that's put on the table right away. And then from there on, what happens is the proposal is researched, and you look for validity in the proposal. Is the thesis correct? Is the criteria correct? Or is all the issues being addressed, or all the opportunities addressed within a particular site, within this particular document? And your research is basically intended to use any method at all to find verification for that and advance it. Then from there, we engage the public in something that's quite thorough. I mean, we've put everything on the table as far as what the planner knows. We've done whatever we can in terms of the research. We present that to the public in various formats, and we ask for things that have nothing really to do with the public's opinion of it. We're asking for the knowledge that the public can contribute to this particular process. So we're looking for, from the public, we're looking for issues that might be missed from their experience, based on their experience with a particular site, or opportunities that might be missed, or we ask them, based on your experience, is this criteria relevant. And then we have other kinds of experiences related to the land, like do you use this land? What do you do when you are on this land? What are the things that could make using this land more useful? So you're not asking for opinion as such, you're asking for knowledge from the public, and that should be shaping your presentation afterwards. So your purpose, or your proposal, should be different than your presentation, would be quite acceptable to be different, based on what you have learned in the meantime. And then I think when you do the presentation, you're highlighting the differences between the proposal and the final result. And that should give you pretty much a good document for you to make a decision, and hopefully something that you can champion, because we do need champions in this process. We actually need, there's three components that we need. We need the professionals doing their job and doing a good job at that. We need a good method, a clear, transparent method that everybody can understand. And we need champions for it. And I look to you for being champions of that.
Thank you very much. So the 5 minutes goes fast, so.
It sure does, yes.
We have Councillor Armstrong with a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I understand that you're looking at it from an economic perspective. I get that. However, I think in this day and age, we really have to look at the different socio-cultural and environmental factors as well as economic activities, and I think our staff does that very well. So I personally think we get really good reports from them based on all of those. So, I appreciate your interest in it, but I just would also like to ask too, is your degree in this as well?
I've had background in it, yes, but I
Do you
don't
have
have
a
a
like
degree.
professional
I don't
degree?
have a degree in this,
Okay, yeah.
no.
Okay, anyhow, I appreciate you bringing that forward, but myself, I can only speak for myself, I'm quite happy with, I believe we get very good caliber reports that take into account our new reality, which is like climate change and all of that as well, and I think we have to really focus on those new things just besides economics. But thank you.
Yeah, you may have, could I speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I may cut you off if I go on too long, though.
Sorry about that. But we may have a kind of a view of economics as something that is really the study and understanding of what people do. It's everything that they do. It's how they behave, and that's economics. And if you look at planning is how they behave or what people do on a particular piece of land or in a particular area. So it does actually cover the social aspects of the social and cultural aspects of any city. And in as much as we are, it really does depend on the model. That's how appropriate it is. Like I wouldn't recommend an economic model that in any way resembles neoliberalism, because that's not a complete economic model. But if you have a realistic economic model that's properly embedded in social mores and cultural practices and ethics, and it also includes, the environment as a real value, you will pretty much cover every aspect of it. Now, there are specialty skills within the planning department, for sure. But they can also use this method very effectively to present to you usable documents in a very easy and brief way.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions on the queue, so it's my pleasure to thank you for making your presentation tonight. And
thank you for the opportunity.
thank you.
Chair, thank you, Chair. It's getting close to the 6:30 mark, so I don't know if you would want to have your recess now before moving on.
I would say that's a heck of a good idea. Thank you. So I gotta go there. Point Rory Warnock regarding the Heart and Stroke Foundation Big Bike Municipal Challenge. So I'm assuming we're going to be trying to get a team together to pedal a big bike, is that? Yeah, right, I figured it would be. Welcome, sir, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and 5 minutes it will be. Thank you very much, Chair and Mr. Mayor and Council, for enabling us to come and make this presentation. And we'll be brief within 5 minutes. I just thought I'd talk a bit to start about what Heart and Stroke does with donor dollars, and specifically because it's of interest, of course, what we do on the island. And here specifically, we do have research grants with the UVic Neurobiology Lab, but we also we have another research grant with UVic also, which is kind of interesting. And I don't want to belabor that point because at different points of time, we may have nothing with UVic, we may have nothing with UBC, it may all be in Dalhousie, but because the research is a very competitive peer review process. But the point being, it's kind of nice to see that we do have a program. We also do the Island Heart to Heart with the hospital, which is a post-stroke or post-heart attack recovery program. It's heavy on education, which is what we do. And then we also have the Heart Smart Kids education program, which is very much ancillary to, we look for it to be incorporated into school boards programs or individual school programs. And it's a fairly new program. We're in about year 4. It's been well embraced in BC. And here in Nanaimo, we have 5 schools participating, and the education is geared, of course, around diet and exercise and water versus Gatorade kind of conversations. And our goal is to really make that a focus with either Indigenous schools or probably more importantly, to cover more people, is the high population Indigenous schools, and that's the case here in town. So, so that's kind of where our donor dollars tend to go. The Big Bike Community Challenge is kind of fun because I just moved to the island in April, and I've been with Heart and Stroke for some time, but in the metropolis of Kingston, Ontario. So coming to the island was kind of new for me. And 2 employees from the town of Ladysmith who participated on the bike in the month of May said, we have this great idea for you. We think you should have a municipal challenge. So I said, well, this was bike day, and Ladysmith actually came to Nanaimo to ride in Nanaimo. And so I said, well, I'll get back with you in June and we'll discuss this. So they had some great ideas. I thought, this is super. So the mayor was kind enough to have a phone conversation with me. You folks are kind enough to have me here today. The response has been quite amazing up to date, with the exception of the town of Ladysmith. Go figure, but that's just because it's called work for me. We've communicated with mayors on the island and where possible with the CAOs, and we've been asked to communicate with by the City of Victoria CAO with Mr. Laffin with the CRD. So all those conversations have been underway, and it's looking like a lot of fun. The bike itself is a very fun event. For those of you who are familiar with it, the Big Bike. It seats 30 people, one of whom is a professional driver. And the other 29 are folks who sign up to ride the bike. It's got a great community profile, and it's quite a team builder. So my ask is of you folks is that you would endorse the concept, hopefully participate, and that would be a case of some of you, if not all of you, but also city staff, and which is what happens elsewhere. So that's the short version of the long story. Where's that video? What do I do to get the video?
You don't.
I don't. Okay. The video is 20 seconds, but it just gives you a flavor if you have not seen the bike at Woodgrove or downtown. Perfect. And I'll just close, and that gives you a flavor for what the bike does. Do I move this, Matt, to the last slide? Which is the photo. There we go. And that photo I'll close with because that just happens to be the the Upper Island Power Pioneers, which are retired BC Hydro employees, and they ride here. And a fun group, some of them are even a little younger than me, but a fun group. And everybody who rides the bike, it does it for one goal, apart from the obvious of raising funds for heart and stroke, but it's to have fun. And it really is a team builder and a chance for employee engagement. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, and right on time. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to our delegation. I think this is a grand idea. I'd all be for it. I think it's probably the only time we'll ever get maybe all 9 councillors on a bike at any given time. So I would say I'm up for it. How about anybody else?
Sure.
Well,
Make a motion, let's do it. We need a motion.
I'm not sure we need a motion. We'll be there.
thank you. Well, then my question of you would be, what is my next step I mean, obviously, you would assign a captain, you or somebody from city staff, and I'll communicate with that individual and the captain is treated sort of they're the lead dog, if you will, and they'll organize things. And I don't know.
So if I could just interrupt here, so my assumption is there's a fiscal responsibility of those who are riding the bike to contribute? Is that,
sure.
I figured you'd say yes.
Yes. And however, for every team that's riding for the first time, in my experience, it's not about the fundraising, it's about generating the enthusiasm and the momentum, and then in future years, they both grow. So,
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Again, might I suggest you possibly call the mayor's office?
Yes.
And Donna would probably be able to get you started in the right direction.
That's what I will do. And I'll do that later this week. I'm going up island from here and back to Victoria midweek. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the month of May next year.
Perfect.
Take care.
Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is Rick Hine to talk about the opioid crisis, to present plans that we are undertaking to help with the opioid crisis and a solution. Magic to our ears.
Might take more than 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, 30
Okay,
seconds or
I'll
something.
be lenient.
All right. As we've heard tonight, there's a lot of problems in our society, you know. But as I go through this, I just want you to think about the word pilot. Members and council, your worship, thank you for the opportunity to bring you up to date on the efforts of our company to work with stakeholders in helping save lives for those who have an opiate use disorder. Opiate addiction is a long-lasting chronic disease that can cause major health, social, and economic problems. Opiate addiction is categorized as a powerful compulsive urge to use opiate drugs, even when they are no longer required medically. In 2006, the city of Nanaimo came to me and asked if Crankshaw Holdings would take on the living room, a day-use place where those homeless could do their laundry, see a nurse, use a computer, or simply find a safe place to rest. At the time, the intended destination was the Salvation Army. It was temporarily placed in a smaller location on Nickel Street. But I understand the owner wanted to turn the location into a coffee shop and asked the program contractor to find another place. While we were hesitant about the program, we did move forward, starting with a meeting with concerned citizens, explaining that many of those who used the living room were already attending the building for treatment. On May 1st, 2006, the living room was opened on the Nickel Street side of our building on the lower floor. Whatever concerns about this program were due in part to it being temporary. Fast forward to today, and our building at 55 Victoria Road sees about 500 patients a week, with the youngest so far being 12 years old. This building is home to 7 doctors, all trained in opiate replacement therapy, using 3 clinics. One clinic is operated as a not-for-profit, one a doctor-operated clinic, and one operated by a businesswoman that hires doctors. The patients of these clinics could care less about the legal structure and are more concerned about the treatment they need from their doctor, which borders on family practice. I started operating downtown commercial property on behalf of Crankshaw Holdings in 2002. And throughout these years, I have seen myself advocating for the needs of downtown businesses and the disenfranchised alike. If I was a fish, I would be scaleless. During this time, I have listened to the business community, especially those who have rented from us, and those who have found themselves with an opiate use disorder. I consider myself unique and privileged in a position to see both sides of the equation. On November the 14th, 2017, I contacted staff about the use of the space as a possible youth center, and then followed that up with a plan that I am going to mention. The response at that time was, thanks for that. It's a good space, which I think could be used in a number of ways. On January 25th, 2018, John Horn, the social planner, toured the site. It is still available. In conversations with some of our doctors, we also feel there is a need for a low-barrier clinic for those who are not currently in treatment. Both the new living room and the clinic would allow us to intervene and work at encouraging people into treatment. There needs to be a full continuum of services. We've seen that discussed tonight. That's why we are now rebranding this building into a single source of help for those who are suffering from an opiate dependence, to those parents and families who are looking to help for their loved ones. We have called this Center One. Center One will offer a single point of contact with a single website full of resource material from drug use to helping people understand why drug users do what they do. It will offer a single phone number and contact to the clinics and other partners. Our proposal also calls for 2 ambassadors on mopeds, responding to the calls of people in doorways and to pick up needles. The ambassadors will also encourage those hanging around to come on back to the living room. Education, being an important part of the solution, is offered through the ambassadors for both the business and the residential communities. Over the last 6 months, we have met with Nanaimo's MLA, Sheila Malcolmson, Allen Health, city staff, and 2 city councillors, some of which have met with our Dr. Hunter and our pharmacist. We have contacted the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. We were told to contact Island Health and to have a nice day. The general theme with our efforts appears to be that we are a round peg trying to fit in with a square system. That we have a for-profit clinic and therefore help will not be forthcoming. Our doctors don't ask new patients which political parties they support or whether they prefer to be seen by a doctor working in a for-profit or a not-for-profit clinic. I doubt the patient would care less. Moving forward, we are gathering like-minded members of our community, having discussions, VI solutions from Vancouver Island universities, and creating an advisory committee as we start the process of changing from that round peg into a square one with a new not-for-profit organization. I'm here today to offer our resources, an opportunity for leaders in our community to recognize a one-stop solution and in working to save lives, prevent addictions, and to help those who now find themselves addicted onto a better life. And that's my 5 minutes. I've got more of it.
I know. I was lenient, right? I thought I saw a question. No? Oh, okay. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair Turley. I'm just curious, is this just for information purposes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Oh, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you. Just a quick comment as someone who has sat in on a number of those meetings with you. I think forming an advisory committee with multiple partners is a really great next step. So I commend you for that.
We are bringing people together and we're trying to formulate a thing. I think we sit outside the realm. I mean, you've got the Chamber of Commerce, you've got all these nonprofit organizations, and that seems to be where all the focus is. But we're sitting here with 3 clinics that support the majority of people who are in opiate addictions in this city. You know, we should be somewhere. We should be included at some point in something, but we're not. We are fought against for some reason. We don't know. You know, we have a space for the day use facility. The city has funds for a day use facility. Yet I've attended the meetings about day use facilities and it bounces around and never comes back to saying, okay, how do we sit down with these folks, with these clinics, and have a continuum in that place and make it all come together?
Mayor Krogh.
Thank you very much, Chair. through you to Mr. Hine. I just want to firstly say thank you for the presentation and thank you for presenting to a few of us some time ago in my office. One thing I want to ask about in terms of, we heard tonight the Chamber of Commerce indicate that a number of the businesses downtown have said they'd really like a place where people could go during the day. And I know that a former councillor, well known to both of us, has indicated that he would certainly oppose that because it just provides a center for the exchange of drugs, et cetera, and leads to more criminality. Do you have any comment about that in terms of your knowledge or experience with respect to having a day center, if you will, for the homeless and those with mental health and drug addiction issues?
What, I'm sorry, your mic wasn't on, so I couldn't really handle what you were saying.
I'm sorry, in terms of having a center?
Yes.
Where folks who are homeless, mentally ill, drug addicted, whatever the case may be, would be able to go during the day as opposed to sleeping in the woods or the parks or whatever?
Well, the day, because I couldn't present the whole thing, our proposal was for a day-use facility which included day beds, medical treatment, perhaps a safe injection station, etc. It was an inclusive one-stop shop and where we can engage people when they do come in for these things that maybe they're not in treatment, that we can encourage them into treatment. When we talk about crime, and if this crime is being committed by those who are suffering from opiate addictions, well, they're being driven, much like prostitution is being driven because people, the two mums that I know of who had happy families, now they're prostituting on Victoria Road because they had pain medication, they were cut off. So that's how they're supporting their habits. But other people who do have addictions, they're stealing things to support their habits. But to fix that problem, we should look at reducing that desire, and that desire is done through treatment. But we're not looking at that. I mean, we've got 3 clinics sitting there with 7 doctors that we can certainly expand on, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Next, we have Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Just to follow up, you were involved in the old living room as it was set, and I know there was lots of issues with it. That's one of the reasons it shut down. Would you use the lessons learned from that to this?
Why was it shut down?
Some of the issues. John Horn came to the Public Safety Committee back in 2017 and explained to us that was one of the reasons that it wasn't functioning properly the way it was intended to. There was unintended consequences. There was a lot of legal issues, so that's one of the reasons it shut down.
Well, I'm not sure about, because none of that stuff was presented back to me. It was a temporary place. Anything dealing with it, any concerns I have were met with, it's a temporary situation, so it will be going to the Salvation Army in due course. It was only a short stay, so it wasn't shut down. It just that it was scheduled to be moved, and that's what it did.
Yeah, that's not what was told to us at the Public Safety. You could check that, but perhaps maybe it'd be from staff.
Well, that's to say, that's why I wish people, when they hear these things in your committees, that come on and talk to us, because there are people within the community who would like to steer the narrative on this issue. And if you want true and honest answers, then come and talk to me or invite me to your committee meetings, and I'll give you the truth.
And just my other question, you said that you didn't get anywhere with the Minister of Addictions?
No, you'd figure somebody who's responsible for mental health and addictions, Judy Darcy, would be willing to at least have somebody come to the table, especially somebody who has, sees all these people every week. But the response we got was contact Allen Health and have a nice day.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hemmings, were you wanting to speak? Oh, okay. I don't see any further speakers on this issue, Mr. Hines, so thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, so now we go on to reports. Mr. Harding is going to present a report on the East Wellington Park Management and Action Plan update. And you guys can read the rest of it here, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a few moments, I'll turn the presentation over to Madeline Coe, who's our Parks Planner, and Rob Lawrence, Environmental Planner, which will go through a presentation for you. At the podium, anytime?
Yes.
Just as an introduction to them, so typically when we get larger pieces of parkland, we want to try and do a broader either strategy or overall land use. So this is one we've had for a few years now. We've at a point now we've had a year long of some engagement and some other activities from groups and organizations that want to come forward. So we're coming with you with a draft tonight with the idea, if you approve, we'll go out for more public input. This is a little different for us. We don't actually have a lot of ALR. In fact, I think it might be the only one I know of that's ALR land that's also parkland. So it does provide a little different part of the program, which we actually have to do an application to ALR for some non-farm use. So you'll notice in here, we're asking you for three things. One is to go out to the public with this draft, also to send an application to Agricultural Land Reserve for non-park development, and then with those in place, we'll come back to you with our findings. So I'll turn it over to Madeline Coe and Rob Lawrence now to do a presentation on the planning process to date.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a
Yep, you're on.
PowerPoint for this one? No?
No, we were unaware that there was a presentation.
Oh, that looks like. That's just a PDF? or-
Yeah, we didn't. We weren't aware.
Well, is it possible to use the PDF or should I just go for it?
Looks good.
Yeah, if we can scroll through it. Oh yeah, that'll work. Okay, here we go. Mr. Harding has just given a bit of background on this plan, but what I'm going to do for you tonight is run through just a summary of the site, the planning process that's been followed to date, and then just some of the highlights out of the plan itself. So East Wellington Park is 12.7 hectares in size. It was acquired by the city in 2014 as part of a land swap agreement to expand the Millstone Greenway. So you can see the west property line actually follows the Millstone River. So there's significant riparian interests with this site. It's also within the floodplain of that river, so for much of the winter months, the park becomes flooded and the access is limited for that reason. It's located within the Agricultural Land Reserve, as Mr. Harding touched on. So this is relatively unique for parks in Nanaimo due to the riparian area and then also some other characteristics of the site that can support nesting habitat for a variety of species of birds. This is considered an environmentally sensitive site. It's also the future site of the Millstone Sewer Trunk expansion, which there's a right-of-way along the eastern property line to support that infrastructure upgrade in 2023. All right, thanks. So the planning process to date, the planning process began in 2018, and so far this has involved some public consultation, so that there was a survey and an open house at the park. There's been stakeholder consultation with a number of different community groups, as there are a few of them, which we'll go over, that have an interest in this park and using it for their purposes. And then also there have been 2 environmental assessments done for the site, to look at the characteristics, the biophysical characteristics of the site, and then also to get an idea of what environmental impacts might result from some of the park uses that came up through the public consultation. So based on the findings from the planning process, 6 plan goals were developed. So here's where I'll get into the plan content. So goal 1, environmental conservation and restoration. So I've touched on the fact that there's riparian habitat in this park, seasonally flooded open field habitat, making it environmentally sensitive. So this opens up opportunities for some restoration work, as the riparian buffer from the Millstone River is pretty thin. There's definitely opportunities to make that wider to enhance the habitat value and also lessen impacts and conflicts between wildlife and park users. And potentially even opportunities to create some new habitat areas in the park by looking at the possibility of back channels and things like that to support enhanced fish habitat. And so this is kind of, again, like a lens where we're looking at this plan through an environmental lens, so this will come up through some of the other goals as well. So goal number 2, agricultural production. So being in the ALR means 2 things for the park. For one, it means that the park is subject to the Provincial Agricultural Land Commission regulations. So as Mr. Harding touched on, this means that there will need to be a non-farm use application made to support the uses laid out in this plan. It also means that this is a pretty unique opportunity to support local agricultural production within one of the city parks. There's interest from at least 2 community groups at this point in future partnerships with the city to see some sort of agricultural production on the site. So Vancouver Island University, who has their horticulture campus just down the street, has expressed an interest, as well as Nanaimo Food Share, who has a lease to farm land just right next door. Goal 3, thank you. Support astronomy activities. So Nanaimo Astronomy Society is another group that we've heard from regarding this park. So they use this site quite often. Apparently it has excellent southern exposure and some of the best star viewing in the region, they say. They've identified opportunities to add some modest astronomy amenities, so that would involve a concrete pad where they can place their telescopes and some sort of an arbor or another structure that would block some of the light intrusion. In the long term, they're interested in partnering with the city to pursue an urban star park designation through the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. So that's something that acknowledges parks that have excellent astronomy potential and also comes with a commitment to manage light pollution within those areas. Goal 4, support education and research. So all of the groups that have an interest in the site also support education and research to varying degrees, of Vancouver Island University obviously having a lot of research potential, and with that interest in the park and the fact that there's such a diversity of interesting uses that are possible here, yeah, it brings up many opportunities for partnerships to look at education and research, and then also some more informal education opportunities, such as just interpretive signage in the park where people can learn about the various uses that are being proposed by this plan. Goal 5, accommodate dog walking. So East Wellington Park is a very popular dog walking location, and it has been even since before it became a park in 2014. So with the survey that was done, more than 40% of the respondents identified that they use the park for dog walking. Among the respondents, when talking about off-leash dog use versus on-leash, there was almost a 50-50 split between those that were in favor of that and those that were opposed to it. Currently, the park is technically designated for on-leash only, but it's often used as off-leash, even though that's not supported currently. So this was a big point of discussion during the consultation, but beyond just the public perspectives on whether or not this park should be used for off-leash dog walking, there's two other significant considerations, one being the fact that it's in the Agricultural Land Reserve, and the other being the results of the environmental report. So the Agricultural Land Commission has concerns with dog off-leash use because of the potential for impacts on livestock in the adjacent area, and we have received some reports of that happening in this area. And then as well, the environmental report recommended against having just outright off-leash dogs at this park just because of the nesting habitat and potential for conflict there. But from talks, at the end of the day, it'll come down to whether or not the Agricultural Land Commission approves this park plan. But so far, we have reason to believe that they wouldn't be opposed to having a penned dog off-leash area, and the environmental report also supported that. So that's what's been drafted into the plan currently. Goal 6. Improve park access and amenities. So as I touched on at the beginning of the presentation, this is a seasonally flooded site, so that does limit park access during a few of the winter months. So the plan proposes to install a raised trail at the same time as when the Millstone sewer trunk expansion would take place, so essentially putting the trail on top of that. So that would improve year-round accessibility. There's also opportunities to improve accessibility from the parking lot for people with mobility limitations to be able to get into the park more easily, and then put seating at intervals throughout the site as well, along with some other new park amenities such as garbage cans and nature viewing areas. So those are the 6 goals. The plan includes an implementation schedule to guide completion of those goals. This includes short, medium, and long-term implementation actions. So I just took a snip from the plan itself here. It may not be possible to read it, but basically I just wanted to show how it's broken down. So it includes implementation actions, the corresponding plan goals and objectives, the general timing, responsible parties, who's going to be involved with making it happen, and budget implications, not including staff time. And so as a next step, we can start to flesh out what some of the actual dollar values will be for the budget implications. And then on the very right, ongoing park maintenance implications for each of the action items. Oh, Yeah. Mhm. Okay, and this is the concept site plan that was developed to guide implementation of the plan. So it breaks the site down into 5 different zones, each with their own management implications, and I can see that that is going to be impossible to read on this format, but it's also in the agenda package. Yep, so there's the 5 different zones. It shows the location, general locations. I mean, it is a concept at this point, but general locations of where the trail could go, general dog off-leash area up near the parking lot, and those yellow circles indicate possible locations for nature viewing areas.
I should emphasize there's a huge, well, pardon me, I should add there was an expansion of the riparian area to 30 meters. So the existing riparian area is highly degraded, and there's a lot of erosion going on in the mainstream channel as well. So part of the work would involve a tree planting program along the riparian area, and that would be fenced off in a manner that could sustain the limited flooding period that would happen over the course of the year as well, just to underscore that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, anything else to add at this point?
Just to underscore, again, this is really a part of a bigger picture around climate adaptation and mitigation by doing the enhancements to improve the riparian area, and we see this as a great opportunity to work with the agricultural community on looking for opportunities to kind of mold agricultural practice and environmental restoration, particularly maybe in the restoration area along the riparian area, but perhaps through the farm production. There seemed to be some interest to explore this, and this could be a good venue for that, to take a more innovative approach to these issues.
So that brings me to a staff recommendation for next steps. So we are recommending that council direct staff to hold an open house at the park and post the draft East Wellington Park Management and Action Plan to the City of Nanaimo's website to gather public input, submit a non-farm use application to the Agricultural Land Commission, I should say, for park development, and report back to council with the final draft plan. Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Harding, you're on the list here. Did you?
So that was earlier on for introduction.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was figuring. Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not showing any disrespect for the vigorous debate that might follow, but I would think that this is a no-brainer, so I'm going to move the staff recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Brown. Okay, now we got a list of speakers. Nothing else to add?
Gilding the lily, are we?
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of gilding the lily a little bit, I just wanted to comment, thank you for the presentation. I recall, I think this park first came to our notice with the remotely piloted aircraft people wanting to be able to use it, and then it was determined that's really not an appropriate place for their activity. And it seems to me between the ALR constraint, the riparian constraint, and especially the flooding, considerable flooding restraint that happens in this piece of land, our applications for use as a park are greatly limited, and it's not appropriate for what we might call traditional park usage. In other words, playgrounds and sports fields and so on. So it's an opportunity, I think, to be able to use it for more unique opportunities such as the agricultural component, the astronomy group sounds interesting, and others that might come out of the open house. So I'll certainly support the staff recommendation to move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. Was so excited to read this. I think this is such a great proposal or plan. A couple of questions. One was I paused at the heavy machinery piece. It's not, I know VIU's horticulture program is very close by, so I'm guessing that they would be machines associated with traditional farm practices, and therefore wouldn't be, I'm picturing, people practicing with backhoes in a big park, which doesn't really make sense to me.
Okay, and so you're referencing the part where, sorry, through the chair, where it speaks about partnering with the VIU Trades program?
Yes.
Okay, so Yeah, so that would be something that we would look at for some of the excavation work that already is proposed in here. So if we were, through further environmental studies, able to support a new back channel, so that excavation and potentially creation of the new sewer line, although we'd have to look into that a bit more, but.
Okay, that
only
helps.
for- Yes.
That helps. It's not going to be a testing ground for students in big
Right.
machines. Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe
And,
I'll clarify the wording. Yeah.
Secondly, would you mind going back to the plan that has the outline of what the park is proposing to look like? I just want to know what one little leg of the multi-use trail, yes, that one. So this right there, where is that going to connect to?
And through the chair, that is a typo, basically, on the plan. Yes, that's something that we'll be erasing out of there that we just noticed when it was too late to have that fixed for this version.
Okay, thank you. So the multi-use path then is completely contained within the park. It's not
Yes.
connecting to any other networks. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Through you. Question on this, would you get the non-farm application first, like the approval before we went to the open house, or do you have to have the open house to submit your application to the ALR?
Through the chair, this has been a bit of a question in my mind as well. I think if we're not anticipating any huge changes to this, and from my discussions with the Agricultural Land Commission staff, the recommendation was just, yeah, submit it as it is with the general plan. If there's something that they want to tweak, we can work on that. So I think we would look at doing that as soon as possible, just given their application processing time can be quite lengthy.
I guess my concern would be that I wouldn't want to proceed with an open house until we did get the approval from the ALR. You know, if we spend all that money and get all the public excited, and then all of a sudden the ALR comes back and says no.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you have any thoughts
We
on.
have some preliminary input, though, from the ALR, is that correct?
Mhm. Yeah, so I did talk with staff at the ALC, and based on this draft plan, they didn't have any major red flags. Like, I felt quite comfortable proceeding with what we're proposing at this time. So I guess that's a decision to be made. I didn't get the sense that we were at risk for having this be shut down completely. Maybe some tweaks, but nothing that seemed life-altering for what's being proposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Rudolph, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my experience with the ALC is that they often want the municipality to state their position on a plan before they give their formal comments, so it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So I think with the public engagement process still in front of you, I'd suggest that it wouldn't hurt to submit it, but you may get a response that says they'll be awaiting your response to the public engagement and a confirmation that you're prepared to adopt this plan. And that's been my experience with them in other locations. So, but never hurts to submit.
Mr. Harding, you're still showing up here. Did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on one part, the multi-use trail component. So under the overall Greenway plan, the goal was to extend over to connect with the to the Eastmont or the Harewood Road, no, not Harewood Road, Westwood Road site, and then also connect to the Parkway Trail. So right now, though, we don't have authority to go through there or a land agreement. So it does end there on conceptual. Long-term goal would be to connect it.
Councillor Geselbrecht.
Thank you, Chair. First off, love the plan, love the agriculture, love the restoration of the riparian area. One question I do have is just where's the proposed sewer main going through? Is it like the upper area, or is it the one that jogs along the?
So it would be along the eastern property line, so where it says the agricultural machinery access.
Yeah.
So that property line, and unfortunately, we don't have the actual right-of-way showing on this plan, but that would be the general alignment of it.
Okay. And then following up on that, just in terms of the dog off use area, how what is the current usage like? How much pressure is there to put a dog off leash usage there, or?
Answer that.
Thanks.
Well, this is a conceptual plan, so it's a suggested area for feedback. It was suggested through the input we did receive from the ALC that this if we were going to allow dogs on the park, they needed to be contained and fenced because of the potential threat to livestock or farm animals in the area with dogs off leash. Currently, there is an informal path that goes around the periphery of the park, and it's a mix of people with dogs on leash and off. So this is an opportunity to kind of provide an option for those who wish to have their dogs run in an area of the park that has the least impact from the flooding. Most of the flooding that lasts the longest period of time is toward the south of the park. The area up near the parking lot probably has the most time that it's not flooded. So that was the decision for that reason.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, that's why I'm curious, like say for example, if there's agricultural use on there and to be able to utilize the site all year round, that potentially is the only spot that you could do that. And also, if there is a dog off-leash spot, would you be allowed to have your dog on a leash still and go around the entire area, or would all dogs be kind of contained in that area?
So the way the plan has envisioned that is, dogs on leash would be permitted throughout the site. It would be just, if you want to take them off a leash, it would have to be within the fenced area.
Okay. And can I have one more?
One more?
Yeah.
Mr. Harding was... Oh, you're okay? Okay, carry on then.
And then also for the non-farm use application, does that include, it'd be for the dog off-leash part and then also the astronomy area? Those would be the two items that you'd need to have permission from the ALC?
Through the chair, yes, those would be elements that would need the non-farm use approval. I found out also trails are something that requires that, and any sort of soil alteration or formalized trails, anything beyond kind of passive recreation on the site.
Okay. Awesome. Good work. Thank you.
Question. Well, I got two more speakers here. I'm learning how to use this thing, so bear with me. Councillor Brown. Here we are. You're on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your patience.
You might pass that along to the mayor.
This is great. Thank you so much. I won't dwell on that, but it's really great to see. Just a quick question, because I'm very, very excited about the astronomy platform. I do know, and I'm not trying to pick on this program, but our LED lights are very problematic for viewing the night sky through the telescope with light pollution. If we are to seek the Urban Star Park designation, which would be great, I'm just wondering, I know this plan is conceptualizing the park, but if we are going down that route, are we sort of looking at the broader area to begin with, and what we would need to do to ensure the dark sky, as much as possible, this area has a lot of light pollution, but is preserved?
Through the chair, we've had kind of very preliminary high-level discussions with the Astronomy Society about what this would entail to get that designation, but from what I understand, yes, it would require looking at the larger area. The RDN boundary starts quite nearby, so we would be looking at talking with them, and yes, so we'd be looking at the wider area for sure. And we've already talked to BC Hydro to get some of the light fixtures upgraded in the area, which helped a little, but because of the grade, they still kind of shine in. But yes, it will be a wider initiative than just this one site.
Great, thank you so much.
And finally, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of little questions. I much preferred it when you're over there. We keep an eye on you. This Millstone sewer trunk, we just did a whole bunch of work in that area. Has that been completed, or do we have to continue on from where we left off?
Through the chair, is Bill Sims still here?
Yeah.
I'm going to vote against this just to justify the debate.
Well, it's an excellent question. Through the chair to Councillor Bonners, the entire length of the Millstone trunk is being upgraded over a 20-year period. And this is one section from here down to Harewood Road or Westwood Road. Yeah.
Westwood, yeah. And when we were out on Friday with the stream keepers and NALT, I remember, Mr. Sims, you stating that we couldn't put a trail out near Brandon Lake on that particular part because the ALC wouldn't allow us to put a trail on top of a pipe, even though we had access to it. Are we going to run into that same problem here?
Probably.
You may want to answer it. Well, just to speak to that, that was, again, 20 years ago when we had those discussions with the ALC, so policy may have changed since then.
And we'll include this in the plan, so that will be included in their consideration. I hope that that will cover that off as well.
And if I may, at the risk of being blatantly self-promoting, touristinourtown.com is a website that we actually posted a video about that park, both myself, Beverly, and Benson, and at all times, Benson was on a leash.
So does that mean you have to exclude yourself from the vote, or is that?
I don't think so.
Yes, okay. I still show Councillor Brown and Mr. Harding. I'm assuming those are errors. Good, okay. I just want to quickly say that I sit on the Agriculture Advisory Committee because of my background in agriculture, and I don't know how many proposals we've had to go before the ALC. The success rate is very minimal, and I'm almost thinking, looking at this, that the one thing that's probably going to have to get turfed is the off-leash dog area. I'd be surprised if the ALC went along with that. In fact, I'd be shocked, but anyway, give it a shot. You can always change it later. So, okay, call a question. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, final, at least I think it's the final thing on our agenda is the 2019 Community Action Initiative Community Wellness and Harm Reduction Grant Application to be produced by Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to immediately turn it over to Ms. Bhopal Singh, who's our Manager of Community Planning, just to provide you with a brief introduction to this report.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what you have before you today is a request by staff for us to put in an application for a Community Wellness and Harm Reduction Grant application. Some of you may recall that at UBCM in September, the province, through the Community Action Initiative in partnership with the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions and the Overdose Emergency Response Centre, announced some grant funding which municipalities would be eligible for to address harm reduction in the opioid crisis. One requirement of the application that is in partnership with Island Health, and we have that through the Mental Health and Substance Use Division. And so what we're doing is proposing putting in an application for $50,000 for the purpose of supporting a peer-run skills and employment program. And the basis for this concept was from feedback from the community action team that we are part of in Nanaimo. And while this funding, the preference is for communities without community action teams, we still felt it was worth us putting in an application and seeing if we could run this pilot. Another aspect of this is that working with Nanaimo Health Department, an important aspect of this, if we're successful, is ensuring the peer-run skills and employment training program would be a culturally inclusive and safe program. And then the other piece about this is a funding application that we would then do an expression of interest for community nonprofits to apply for if we're successful in getting the funding. So.
Okay. We have Mayor Krogh.
Thank you very much, Chair. And at the risk of encouraging at least another 25 minutes of debate on an issue in which we'll be entirely unanimous, I'm going to move the recommended motion and hope there'll be a seconder.
Council Geselbrecht, seconder. Okay. Well, I have Councillor Martman on the list here. You
I was just going to move the motion.
Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, let me check my agenda here first. That's fine. All in favor? Carried.